Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, wherever you are in the world. We do have an international community usually here, thanks to Zoom. My name is Herb. Excuse me. I'm an alcoholic, and we're just so excited today, Dr. Berger and myself, to co-facilitate our time. We hope it will be very interactive today. That's our plan today. Not as didactic, meaning teaching, although there will be some to give a platform and a context for the discussion today. It's a continuation of looking at emotional sobriety from a tool of intervention on ourselves to bring us back into balance when we've been put into unbalance or disturbance. And the Mary and Joseph Retreat Center is an organization that supports this workshop, these quarterly workshops. They do all the administration, all the money collection, all the interaction and registration. And so I'd like to introduce Melissa if she's here. I'm not seeing it, but Melissa, are you with us today? There you are.
Can you hear me? Sorry, I've been having
very nicely. Very
Okay.
nicely.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Melissa. I'm one of the hospitality team members here at the Mary and Joseph Retreat Center. We've been here since 1963. We were envisioned by the late Sister Mary Ignatius. We first started off as a couples retreat center, but our retreat center is ecumenical. That means we welcome all walks of life. If you're in Southern California, here in Rancho Palos Verdes, please stop by. We would love to meet you. We would love to welcome you, embrace you here at our 8-acre retreat center. I'd like to introduce Herb. Herb has an astounding background. 40 years in a human resource consulting, 37 years of active participation in a 12-step fellowship, a graduate education in psychology, 7 years in Claretian Seminary, and 3 books on spiritual awakening, which we have here in our bookstore. And thank you also to Dr. Berger for being here today. We're so very thankful for both of you. And I wish everyone a good new year. But even tomorrow is a new day. We are always given an opportunity to be a new version of ourselves each day.
When the sun comes up, we have a new opportunity. That's actually a wonderful picture of gratitude and humility. Thank you so much, Melissa, for your support all these years in these programs. And the Retreat Center is a huge fan of the 12-step work that's done, many meetings there. And she mentioned the word ecumenical, which is kind of a fancy word, but it really does mean inclusive, open to everybody who is on the path of a spiritual awakening and or emotional stability as well as sobriety. Dr. Berger is a clinical psychologist with 5 decades of clean and sober. And perhaps, Alan, you could introduce yourself a little bit here and we'll continue.
Well, thank you, Herb, and thank you, Melissa, and thank you, Rainey, for all you do to coordinate this thing. Look, Herb and I couldn't do all this stuff. We got our hands full doing what we're doing. So this wouldn't be possible without all the support that we get from many, many people, as well as from you, all of those of you that register for this. And I appreciate you supporting our work and supporting our vision about emotional sobriety. And that's what this is all about. And Herb and I have been doing this for about 20 years now. We were just looking at some dates the other day when we were on the phone on Friday together. And it's been quite a journey. Our experience goes way, way back. And you've heard that before, so I'm not going to talk about that. But I do want to get into this subject rather quickly today.
Good.
Because it's as you've been with us, the last time that we met, we really created a lot of space for our interaction, and we want to do that again today. But we also want to set the stage and talk about the importance of our relationship to our experience, because that's what this is all about, right? One way of thinking about emotional sobriety is the kind of relationship you're having to the experiences you are having in your life. And there are some ways that we are connected to our experience that I call that diminish the encounter we're having, meaning that we are not able to nourish ourselves with the experience. So then when life is divided into those things that are, quote, good and those things are bad, meaning those things are the way I like them to be and those things that aren't, then I am stuck trying to control the world and make it what I want all the time. And as we're going to see, that becomes an impossible way of life. Although many of us have tried this over and over and over again, and in many different forms and variations, because there's so many different ways that manifests itself in our lives. So today, what we're going to explore is how to have, instead of diminished experience in our encounters, to be able to enhance our encounters. So that's the model that we're going to be talking about today, to give you some concepts, some ideas on how to digest any experience you have, and instead of getting indigestion, to be able to digest it properly so you can take what's nourishing for you, and just like your body does, and get rid of the stuff that you don't need. So that's what our goal is for today. You want to add anything to that, Herb?
Well, I just had the image of emotional Tums. No, that's great. No,
right.
And you've heard, some of you who have had any exposure to me at all have heard my definition of spirituality, going right back to how Alan started out. He started talking, oh, there's my Canadian accent, but then he talked about relationship. For me, those are synonymous. Spirituality, relationship with life, relationship with myself, relationship with other people. And that's the model I use for the 12-step approach, to bring together the material and the immaterial, the human and the spirit, two sides of the same coin, so that we can really integrate it. This is what we're talking about here. This is what we've been talking about for 20 years, how to integrate so that we can become really full and robust human beings. And that's what this is about, dealing with reality as reality is. And most people, really seriously, even in a 12-step program, most people are not familiar with that concept, that reality isn't personal and reality doesn't adjust to us. The whole point of living consciously is to be aware that we adjust to reality. Now, that's not easy just because I say it, just because I know it. Many of you have seen me do this, which was given to me not as a compliment, but as a challenge, a confrontation. I had a lot of information 4 years sober, but I didn't have any transformation. I didn't have the integration. Alan talked about experience. And so that's what we're talking about here, is identifying information. Certainly that was important, but identifying an experience and integrating those so that it becomes literally an integrated part of our life going forward, so that we have tools. Life is not going to be smooth. Life is difficult. That was the first line of The Road Less Traveled. life is difficult, all right, but it doesn't have to be suffocating and overwhelming. And that's the whole point of our work. Thank you, Alan.
All right, so I will share with you our slide deck, and Rainey will be sending you these slides. But if something really captures you and your phone is handy, feel free to take a screenshot so you have it immediately. As Herb said, we are going to continue to unpack our disturbances, and we're going to continue this conversation that we've started. And Herb presented one way of approaching this, and today we're going to explore another way. But I think it's best, we're going to end with this, but Herb, I move this forward because I think it's so important to put this in the beginning to set the right atmosphere, to set the right climate so that we really create an atmosphere that's conducive to learning and discovering new possibilities. So Bill said in the 12 and 12 that only step one, where we made the 100% admission that we were powerless over alcohol, can be practiced with absolute perfection. We can know that without any residual. And that becomes a very important thing. That first step really generates an energy, right? A force that moves us and compels us to continue with the rest of the steps. So taking that step 100% and seeing our powerlessness without any reservation becomes very important. But he says the remaining 11 steps state perfect ideals. These are the goals toward which we look and the measuring sticks by which we estimate our progress. But we do not expect, I do not, Bill did not expect that any of us are going to be able to plug these things in 100%. And that's why Herb and I have been very, very careful in saying emotional sobriety is a practice. It is something that we make gradual steps towards implementing these ideas and integrating them in our life. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, as we say, right? With emotional sobriety, it's pretty darn slow. I mean, because as you're going to see today, the things that are going to trip you up, many of these issues are unconscious, and you are only going to discover them by having a certain kind of an attitude towards your experience, which we're going to be cultivating today. But Herb, what would you like to add about this idea of progress, not perfection?
Well, I heard something within the last 6 months that we hear all the time, practice makes perfect, and this person challenged it, turned it inside out. No. Practice never makes perfect. Practice makes progress. And I use the dimmer switch analogy. Anybody who's had any exposure to me knows that that's my favorite image of this human path that we are walking to expand and develop the spiritual aspect of us as human beings. And that is the dimmer switch can go on at a very low voltage. That's a whole other discussion, the dimmer switch going on. And Alan talked about it in terms of step one, that admitting, that conceding, that giving up because we've suffered so much. 98% of people come to some form of rehabilitation and or recovery because of suffering.
In our job, yeah, and I just wanted to say something about this, Herb, because I think it's very important for us to distinguish between what we would call a suffering that is a part of the human experience that occurs. Let's say you love someone that very deeply and then they pass away, you lose them. That's a necessary suffering in our life. It happens as the course of life. What we're going to see is that we create a lot of unnecessary suffering. And I don't mean it unnecessary because, look, even the suffering that's unnecessary has a value to us because it gives us an opportunity to grow ourselves. So I'm not saying it's unnecessary in that way. I'm just saying that it's a product of who we are, not what's happening in life. And that's the difference. That's what I'm talking about. You know, we talk a lot about things that we're in control of and things we're not. We are not in control of reality. Reality is reality, and Herb and I like to say it only 100% of the time. If you fight reality, reality is going to win. You're not going to beat reality. But when I go ahead and now put my expectations on reality and try to turn reality into what I think I need it to be, is where I create a lot of trouble in my life. And that's what we're going to be looking at today.
I make a distinction between pain and suffering.
There you go. That's
You've
another.
heard it before in meetings. I plagiarize. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. And you mentioned the word, Alan. I think it's the key word for emotional sobriety, and that is attitude. It's my attitude toward it. The fellow who wrote the book, Life's Search for Meaning, a psychiatrist, he said that the only difference between survival in the death camp and death in the death camp was the attitude toward reality. I cannot control anything,
Yep.
but I can have a relationship of acceptance. Yeah.
Very true. So we want you to take a minute and we want you to reflect on these following questions and make a few notes down to yourself. How do you cope with life when things don't go your way? What is your reaction to that? How do you meet that experience that you're having? How do you cope with disappointment? What's your reaction to being disappointed? What meaning do you give to that disappointment? How do you treat yourself when you fail or you don't live up to your own expectations? What kinds of things do you say to yourself? I'm an avid tennis player, and about, 25 years ago, I became a USPTA professional. I'm an elite professional with the United States Professional Tennis Association, not because I'm such a great player, but because of my sports psychology. And there's this wonderful documentary right now on Netflix called Breakpoint, and they're looking at some of these players that are up and coming and following them at the Australian Open tennis tournament that starts at the beginning of the year. And there was this one female player from Australia. I can't remember her last name, Tomlevich or something like that. But I just felt so much empathy for her. She struggles so badly. She wants to win and makes it so important for her. And I could just see what was happening is that when she lost the first set, this part of her, because she didn't win, and she really said, I've got to win this first set. When she lost that first set, this little voice in her just started to say, what are you doing out here? You're an imposter. You're not as good as everybody else. You're never going to make it. And what happened in the second set? She got blown away, 6-1. And it was this whole thing is that when she was in trouble, instead of finding a way to support herself, all she could do was criticize herself. And it was really sad to me because afterwards, when she turned to her coach, is what do I do? He had no answer for her because people don't typically know how to deal with these things. How do you respond when to people when they don't do what you think they should do or what you'd like them to do?
Or what they're supposed to do.
Or what they're supposed to do. All of these questions get to how you respond to life when life is not what you'd like it to be, or when a situation is not when you like it to be, or when someone behaves in a way other than what you'd like. What do you do with that? In my opinion, this becomes so critical in terms of a practice of emotional sobriety that we develop a capacity to meet these disappointments and to be able to meet them and remain, keep our center of gravity over our feet. It might be the best way to say it. keep our balance, as Herb was talking about earlier. But we'll talk about that more as
Well,
we.
one of the techniques, we've talked about it many times, but in this context, I think it's really important to emphasize it is so simple. That word should. It reveals to each of us what our belief is. We're, as you mentioned, we're unconscious of it most of the time. Life should. I should. We should. They should. And it is such a short circuit way of getting to the truth of the lie of our belief by challenging ourselves. When I think it, when I feel it, when I say it, should, hold it up and just take a look at it. As Byron Katie said, is it true? Is it really true? Just really challenge it with the set aside attitude and of mind and heart. I need to be taken to a place of delivery to the truth of this. Go ahead, Al. Thank you.
No, it's that whole process that Byron Katie takes people through. She calls it the inquiry, right?
Yeah.
4 steps, right? First of all is to articulate the belief,
Yeah.
and then to challenge it. Is it true? And then she says, if because when you believe it's true, what does that mean then? What does that do to your life? If it wasn't true, what would it mean?
Yeah.
And then she does the turnaround. How
Yeah.
can you let it go? And we're going to be using some of that idea, a similar one from Gestalt therapy today.
Yeah.
But this is an exciting thing, because think about emotional sobriety as a consciousness of freedom.
Yeah.
And that's what all these tools are about, is to help us mature so that our well-being is not dependent on what is happening, but on how we're dealing with what is happening. It's such a big.
Say it again, Alan. That's very critical.
It's so critical that our well-being is not dependent on what is happening, but on how we're coping with what is happening. That becomes, Herb knows, I've had some major disappointments even recently in the last 5 years or so. And I was very disappointed and I was very discouraged. But out of all of that disappointment and discouragement, some new possibilities were born in my life. But that only happens if I digest the experience properly. Once again, back to, do I enhance my experience or my encounter, or do I diminish it in the way that I am connected to it?
And you've heard it so many times that it's almost trite, and yet it's such deep wisdom attitude. Positive or negative, the glass is half full, the glass is half empty. The glass doesn't change.
Yeah.
But my attitude about it does, and therefore my approach to life does. Yeah, thank you. Oh yeah, there you go.
Well, so I'll turn this over to her, because this is a very important thing. We want to create what we call a liminal space, which means we want you to try to suspend all the things you do out there in the world, all the ways that you approach things, and open yourself up for a new possibility.
This man said to me, you have a lot of information here, but you have very little transformation. He said, are you willing to have an open mind to release the knowledge that you have, to release the experience that you have, to release the thoughts and feelings that you have? Now, you can't do this, but here's a prayer for spiritual intervention, or at least for the willingness to demonstrate an open mind and an open heart. He calls it the set-aside prayer. Are you willing to be delivered to a place that you don't actually even know exists? I mean, this is sophisticated, this is subtle, this is deep, until, in fact, you have the experience, and then it's kind of like, oh, it's such common sense. If I have an open mind to be delivered, hear the words, I can't do this necessarily on my own, totally my experience, but the combination of willingness, mine with the open heart and open mind, and grace, whatever that means to you in terms of the dynamic of life and the universe. All right. some gift that I receive. I don't pretend to precipitate it. There's not a formula to make it happen. There's a mystery here that, with all of the background I have never unlocked the mystery. So I just acknowledge this is a mystery. I don't know how it works. I do know that it works. That's the difference. So please join us in this attitude shift of an open mind and a willingness to be delivered today. I mean, today, to an experience that you've never had, and you can't even anticipate it. God, please set aside everything that I think I know about myself, my unmanageability, my emotional sobriety, and you, for an open mind and a new experience of myself, my unmanageability, my emotional sobriety, and especially you. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you. So one of the things that I think are important for us to realize is Bill called it our basic flaw. Another way I think about it is defining what the real problem is in our lives. And I think a good way to start to think about it is that our problem is created by how we cope with the tension we experience when outcomes don't match our expectations. Now, take that in. That's a mouthful.
It is.
It's a real mouthful, but let's unpack it together. What do I mean by the tension that you experience? Well, you know what it feels like when you're calm and relaxed, right? You're settled, you have a quiet mind and a calm heart. That's what relaxation is. You have a quiet mind, it's not racing with thoughts one way or the other about what's going on, and you have a calm heart. You're just breathing normally. You're probably respirating at around 12 respirations a minute. Your heart's probably beating somewhere between 60 beats a minute and 80 beats a minute, and that's just where your baseline is, right? That's what we call where we're in that calm place, and then something happens. You know, we reach out to somebody to, have, let's say, go out to lunch with, or invite them over for Christmas because we don't want to be alone. And we've told them that, God, this is going to be a tough year. I have one client that went through this recently and had reached out to a few people, and she was so upset that nobody made the time to come and spend with her because she was going to have a lonely Christmas. So she had an expectation on how things and how friends were supposed to act. And when things didn't meet that way, the tension inside of her, she got upset and angry. She started to tell herself things like, they really don't care. I don't really have any friends. I am really alone after all. Nobody really cares about me. So that's what I mean by tension, is we come into conflict with our experience because we are not what we want it to be. Now, that's one way that we experience it, is we externalize it, we project it, we get angry at the situation. Another style that people had is they turn it on themselves. Well, nobody wants to come over because I'm really boring, and nobody likes me because I'm not a very nice person to be around. I'm no fun, da-da-da-da-da-da. And so instead of getting mad at other people, they just turn the energy on themselves and they fault themselves, get mad at themselves. If I was different, I'd have more friends. So the issue becomes, how do we, first of all, become aware of our reaction, our disappointment when it happens? Some of us have done such a good job at numbing ourselves to the experience or feelings that we're having. When I was at San Pedro Peninsula Hospital, and Herb will remember this, one of the things they started in the beginning of the group was what's called a feelings round. And they'd go around and they'd ask everybody how they felt. And some people you'd come to them and they'd say, "Hi, my name's Alan, and I've got no idea how I feel." They weren't lying. they had never developed a practice of paying attention to themselves. They just went through life in a trance as an automaton, putting one foot in front of the other and never paying attention to what their experience was and what it meant to them. So some people don't even recognize when they're tense, when they're upset. Some people do. And some people think, oh, I'm upset because these people should have done it the way that I wanted them to do it. And they don't have any ability to question that maybe they're creating that it's not what the other person did, or it's not the experience, but it's their expectation, unconscious expectation about what should be going on. So this becomes a very important thing, that we see that as the issue. So this becomes an impossible way of life for us when our emotional well-being and happiness is dependent on things going our way. You see, when people tell me, I just want to be happy, I say, that's foolish. And they go, you're crazy. I go, I know. I don't question that anymore. I know I'm crazy. But I say it's foolish because that's not what life is about. That's once again expecting life to be the way you want. Life is just like gravity. Life, you're going to have moments of joy. You're going to feel awe. I mean, some unbelievable peak experiences. You are also going to have moments when you are brought to your knees and you are devastated and you're brokenhearted. Life is both of these. That's what it means to be alive, is to experience. I see people in marriage, they come to me all the time for marriage counseling, and they're sitting there and they're all upset. And I'm going, well, what's upset you? Well, look, I love my wife, but I'm hurt by what she's doing and how she's treating me. I go, okay, well, what's wrong with being hurt? Well, she shouldn't hurt me like that. If she loves me, she wouldn't do that. I go, oh, so you think love doesn't involve being hurt, but how do you know you're in love if somebody can't hurt you? If they can't have any impact on you, there's no love in it. Indifference is the opposite of love, not hate. If you hate someone, you still have feelings towards them. It's when you're indifferent that you don't. And there's a difference. When someone falls out of love with someone, they become indifferent to that person. And it's cold, it's like ice at that point in time. So this is what we want you to understand, is that our basic problem, right, is how we deal with the tension within our personality when things don't go our way. Do we deal with it in a way that enhances our encounter with the experience we're having, or do we deal with it in a way that diminishes it? Diminishing it, meaning that we walk away with resentment. We walk away with unresolved feelings. One way at looking at emotional sobriety is that we do not continue to create unfinished business in our life. We start learning how to resolve issues rather than stuff them in a duffel bag that's filled with all of this residual, incomplete business that we have. Anything you want to add to that, Herb?
Oh, there's so many thoughts, and don't want to burden this with too much, but one thing is that it's okay to have expectations. That's called hope. But it needs to be in the context of reality and conscious. One of the things I've become more conscious of, because Dr. Berger has started an entire series on self-esteem, is how important consciousness is to foster our consciousness. Now, the 12 steps recognize that. Right from the beginning, in step 12, it says, having had a spiritual awakening. Well, all it's talking about is to become really conscious of reality as it is, to acknowledge that, to accept that, and to adjust to that. That's the formula for emotional sobriety. Acknowledge reality as it is. You need to be conscious of that. Then to accept it. This is just the way it is. It's not personal. And now I need to adjust to it in a way that brings me to the reduction of that tension and the balance of moving forward. How do I cope with reality as it is? So I'll stop there.
Ernie Larson, which is Herb and I said that there's kind of was, I think, 3 waves in recovery on this emotional sobriety thing. First was Bill's letter back in '56. That was a Grapevine article and a call to spearheading, right? Another major development in recovery, which unfortunately never occurred. The second real attempt at this was in the 80s when Larson, 70s and 80s, when Ernie Larson started to talk about stage 2 recovery. I think stage 2 recovery and emotional sobriety they fit together. It's hand in glove kind of a thing. And this is what he talked about as stage 2 recovery, is that it's dealing with the mountain of living is what stage 2 recovery is all about. It's getting on with life by facing those patterns and habits and attitudes that control your life. See, this becomes essential to a practice of emotional sobriety, that you become aware of your patterns. You become aware of your habitual thoughts and your habitual ways of reacting to situations, your habitual ways of behaving, and the attitudes that you have around all of those behaviors and experiences. He says, which for perhaps the first time in your life, you're clear-headed, sober, or emotionally sound enough, or emotionally mature enough to start to face. I would say the thing he could have added here, that for perhaps the first time in your life, you have enough humility to face.
Yes.
That's what we're really talking about here, because humility is the realization that I don't have this thing figured out. I have gaps in knowledge. I have limitations. My consciousness creates a limitation, by just the very nature of what consciousness is. I make mistakes. See, if I can embrace all of that, then I can be open to having at least a reasonable doubt that maybe I'm off when I get upset. See, the humility might just create enough space in that experience where you don't blame yourself or you don't blame someone else. In fact, Bill says it very clearly, because I think he talks about, as you guys know that have been around Herb and I, that the purpose of working the steps is the achievement to find emotional sobriety, a practice of emotional sobriety in our life. Well, as we're on this journey and our consciousness changes, the word blame drops out of your vocabulary. Why is that? Because blame is irrelevant. Think about it, Herb. When's the last time you blamed anything? It's rare, isn't it, nowadays?
Right.
It just doesn't happen. It's not a part. Now, before 30 years ago, I mean, my God, there was all kinds of people doing things wrong. And if they would have just done things better, I'd be much better off. I mean,
and that was the turnaround. The turning point for me is I was 4 years sober, 4 years going to a meeting every day, talking to a sponsor every day, 4 years sober, still possessed by, obsessed by a victim attitude. But I didn't know that. I mean, it really was, and Dr. Berger had to suffer through it because he was my therapist at the time. And then I did this 4th step, which began, it didn't resolve everything, but it began to unpack that I had tied strings to events and circumstances and people, and that circumstances and people and events were controlling my feelings and my thoughts and my attitudes and my behavior. And I was able, through the combination, quite frankly, of the steps and therapy, to cut the strings rather permanently. That's why his question is so relevant. When's the last time I was a victim? Not since 1989, quite frankly.
Think about that, Herb. That's remarkable. I mean, that in itself is a miracle. See, that's the magic of this program.
Exactly.
That there is an evolution of our consciousness that is, it's, you know, I like to think of it as an expansion of our consciousness.
Well, and you mentioned humility, the awareness at 5 years of sobriety, that in fact I had been so delusional, so misled by my thoughts and my feelings and my story. It was so embarrassing. It was the humiliation that brought me to humility. Yes. That I finally was able to see the truth, seeing the breakthrough that I had been living in a lie all these years, not able to see that, not willing or resisting,
Just
not able to see the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that sometimes gets misinterpreted as resistance, and it's not resistance.
No,
it's blindness. It's just blindness. You just can't see it. And don't mistake your blindness for resistance. Correct. When you start to see, you start to do things differently. But you have to see that you don't see to get to the point of seeing.
And that's the startling humiliation that leads to humility. True humility, that is truth. Yes. One of my authors that I respect said, humility is truth, that sense of perspective.
Another way of thinking about humility is that you don't have to be what you thought you had to be okay.
That's probably just the opposite, actually.
Well, it's true. It is the opposite, but that's the big lie. See, the big lie Herb is talking about was I have to be a certain way to be okay. Yeah. And when we buy that, it creates all kinds of issues, right? All the consequences of that, and the way that that then projects itself and ripples itself through our life is unbelievable. We get further and further away from who we really are.
But we can try harder.
Oh, we do try harder. Now we try harder to actualize the concept of ourselves, and that's where all the shoulds come in. You know, if 10 shoulds are good, 20 will be better.
Oh, yeah.
So now we create this scaffolding of shoulds, and we're letting these shoulds run our life. And, you know, we've lost any sense of being a determining force in our own life.
Yeah. Use that phrase again, because that's such an important concept to embrace.
Which one?
The determining force. I mean,
but when I turn my will and my life over to the care of these shoulds, so to speak, these shoulds now run my life. I have to check in with the shoulds to see how I should feel about myself. I have lost any sense of agency in my life. Now I have lost a sense of being a determining force in my life. My life is being swept away with these shoulds that I've created. But I've created them and they've become their own master, right? I'm no longer their master. Now I'm their servant. And it gets things turned around in a terrible way.
Well, and it gets reinforced sometimes in the rooms filled with unfortunate ignorance, and the people say, you know, no, I'm powerless over people, places, and things, blah, 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 blah. See, that's so empty.
Yeah.
Don't say that anymore. I'm powerless over people. Yes, that's true. Places and things makes no sense. All right. And people say, no, let God manage your life. Well, quite frankly, that makes no sense at all. Now, I'm not going to spend any time on it, but the total point of the 12-step process and the total point of emotional sobriety is to empower me to manage my life. I am responsible. That's that determining force. I am responsible to manage my life. Now, I modify that somewhat in the 12-step context that God's the managing partner, but I'm in partnership. I'm willing to connect to that power. God's the managing power. God's the GPS, and I listen to the direction and I take the direction, but I drive my car. I manage my life, and I've managed my life for over 33 years. Not always with dignity, many times awkward, many times making mistakes, but progressively learning that I'm going to make mistakes, but they don't name me, and I can course correct, make less mistakes, less grossly, less frequently, correct them more effectively, and more in a healthy way over time. Yeah.
What you're saying, Herb, is so important, because what I've seen, and we can call this a psychological law, the less I know how to regulate my experience and take care of myself, the more dependent I'm going to be on you doing things the way I want you to do.
Well, that's the heart of what we're talking about, isn't it?
Right there. You just put your finger on it.
Yeah.
And this is unconscious. Listen,
Correct.
it's very hard. I mean, I thought that all those ideas were right for so long,
Yes.
never realizing how wrong I was.
Yes.
See, that's that point. It's that we've created, this the way the mind works is that when you go ahead and decide on a trajectory in your life, you have to make it egosyntonic, meaning you have to find a way to believe that this is the right way of being. Because if you didn't believe that, you'd walk around in conflict all the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You couldn't function. They call it ego dystonia. You would be so uncomfortable all the time and out of sync with everything. So what we've got to do is say, this is how things are supposed to be now. It's my job to enforce these rules. That's where the unenforceable rules come from. So now we go through life enforcing these rules, never realizing how off we are, thinking that, my God, when people don't do things the way I am, they obviously are toxic people, because if they were good people, they would do things the way I think they should do them. And so we start throwing people out of our lives. Can't have a relationship with this one. Can't have one with this one. They've got to do what I want them to do for us to be okay. Wow. What a difficult situation. Or the opposite part of it is instead of trying to control people, I try to depend on them, thinking that if I find the right person to depend on, they'll take care of me. Same thing happens. We just fall out of the other side of the bed. It never works. Our relationship, right? Our experience with ourselves, the way Herb is describing about it, when I take responsibility for creating my existence,
Yes.
then I can start throwing my weight, even however slight it might be, on influencing the experience I'm having.
100%. That's the formula, actually.
That is the formula.
Yeah. And what we're talking about today, so relevantly, is the signals that tell us we're in disturbance because we're out of alignment with reality and we don't know it. But if we're watching the dashboard, we'll see the signal. The yellow light is flashing.
Gotta go on.
And that's the consciousness.
Yeah.
For us to understand, if we're empowered to take responsibility for the consequences, I have consequences, but the yellow light is flashing. Therefore, I'm not getting what I want because I'm out of sync with reality in some place. Yeah. And to take responsibility, one, to be conscious, and then to respond to the signal.
Right on.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. This spontaneity thing really works, Alan.
It does work. And so this is what we create in our life, right? We come up with all these rules, all these ideas, and some of are born. I'm not saying that's pathological. It's right. A result of our development. And please hear this. Yeah. I don't think any of us, look, there's people that have pathology, people that suffer from schizophrenia, have a horrible illness that's very difficult to deal with. And today we're understanding that there's a lot of biological components to that, and some other mental illness that's really tough. Some people have a terribly, unresponsive depression to any treatment. And it's a horrible, horrible way of life. But most of the suffering that you and I experience, we used to call it neurosis, which meant that we have created this, right, is a result of what we're looking at here. We have a certain dependence on the situation to be a certain way that we want it to be. We develop these demands and claims that turn into unenforceable rules and expectations, right? We have trauma. Trauma then creates this thing about a desire to have the future reverse the experience of the past. We become perfectionistic, thinking that we've got to be a certain way and life has to be a certain way for us to be okay. You know, our level of consciousness that's determined by our level of differentiation creates these limitations, expectations, our fear that we aren't going to be able to step up and be able to grow and to be able to tackle some of these things. We sell ourselves incredibly short. We imprison ourselves in a terrible way, and we keep thinking that somebody's going to hold the key. They're going to come along, and if I find the right gal, the right guy, have the right relationship, or get the right job, or have a certain amount of money in my bank, or drive a certain car, or if my weight's a certain way, I'm going to be free. Well, guess what? Herb talked about the big lie. That's the big lie.
Right.
Your freedom does not come from any of those things. Not the real freedom. Yeah, you have a few dollars, you can, instead of buying a hamburger, you can buy a steak. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about emotional freedom. We're talking about emotional autonomy. We're talking about a sense of personal agency. We're talking about self-esteem, that you feel good about who you are, that you accept yourself, even though you got shortcomings and you're imperfect, that you still accept yourself. That's freedom.
And the difference, just for me to categorize what you just said in this long laundry list, is the freedom comes never from the outside, always from the inside. Always it's organic, it's internal, never external. And that's why you talk about holding the power deep down inside of yourself.
Right. And look, we're not in any way minimizing the importance of being
Correct.
inspired to act, being
Right.
inspired to look, being inspired. You know, Herb talks about the feedback he got when
Yeah.
the guy did this and this.
Yeah.
That, while he was in behind the bars, that message came through.
Yeah.
He heard that. See, he couldn't come up with that because his consciousness was defining the reality that he was experiencing. But when he got a new idea that opened up his consciousness just that much, listen to what I'm saying. This much can make this kind of a difference.
And that's what Bill talks about. When you open the door just a crack, the light begins to come through. And you talked about liminal space. It's a kind of fancy word, but put it in this context. Liminal space means I've come out of one room,
yeah,
and I'm in the corridor.
Yes.
There are many rooms now and many doors. I'm in the corridor. I don't know where I'm going. I only know where I came from, which was suffering. And now I want to find the right place, the right attitude, the right whatever knowledge about, and I'm in that I'm in the corridor. That's where the sponsorship and therapy and guiding and mentoring really comes in handy, so that I can navigate the darkness of the corridor to find myself, actually, and to find the truth.
Right on. So Bill says it this way, and this is us helping us become aware of those bars. He says our demand for emotional security, but our demand for emotional security that's created from others, not from self. Keep in mind when we talk about this, our demand for others creating our emotional security for our own way had constantly thrown us into unworkable relations with other people. He says very clearly in step 4 that we have no idea what true partnership looks like, because we don't, because we make it all about us. And when it's all about you, you can't have a partnership. Though we were sometimes quite unconscious of this, this is the emphasis Herb and I wanted to make, that you are going, many of these issues are operating at an unconscious level. So give yourself a break. It's not like you are doing this intentionally, consciously. You're still doing it, and you need to take responsibility for it. You need to be able to discover what you're doing, but to do so with some compassion towards yourself is going to mean a lot on your journey.
And the point is to pay attention.
Yes.
To pay attention to the consequences of your behavior. If you're not getting, in consequence, from your behavior what you intended, change your behavior to try to get different consequences. It's really that simple. When we change our behavior, we will change the outcome. Is that the outcome that you want? And if you don't know better, you can't do better. And you might need outside help in order to know better.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of people who are living happy, productive lives. Yeah.
So the way that I've really thought about this recently, and I do think that there's a lot of value to this because it's much more compassionate, and I think much more in line with our humanity, is that we just are stuck in an early stage of development, is that we've just not matured ourselves. And so it's not what's wrong with us, it's what's right about us, is that we have the possibility of becoming much more than we are when we're stuck at this stage of development. And it's the I'm okay if stage of development. That was true when we were children. We were only okay if we had caretakers that were responsive to our needs. We could not act on our own behalf beyond crying, let's say, and signaling that something was out of place. But, you know, when I'm an infant, all I can do is cry. I still need mom to either bring me the breast or the bottle. I can't reach up and grab it and take it. I mean, I am completely dependent at that point, other than my signaling. I can do some signaling and trying to get some attention, but I don't have the capacity to go to move more towards taking care of myself and standing on my own 2 feet. Now, if our development is encouraged and met in the right way, we will move in that direction. But no one has parents that know how to do that. We say we're victims of victims. They didn't have it either. And how can they give us something they never had? They can't do that. All they can do is give us the best of what they had, which is never enough, I say. It's never enough of what we need. It's our job to pick that up from wherever they took us to our development, and now try to grow ourselves in the direction that where we can become what we can become. That's what I see the journey of emotional sobriety as. And so we're trying to reach the I'm okay if consciousness, a consciousness that is not so contingent or conditional upon things being a certain way.
Well, and unfortunately, most of the people here in the audience right now have been in some form of addiction. And my sense is, and Alan, looking for your professional evaluation, but my sense is that when we begin to really get connected to our addiction as addiction, we go into a state of suspended animation in terms of our personal emotional growth. We're stunted. And when we begin to recover, it's like the thawing out at some point, physically and then appropriately emotionally, so that there's this, and Bill says it in step 6 and 7, that there's a rite of passage from this childhood to the adulthood. Now we're capable of being conscious and having agency, as you said, being empowered to be responsible.
Right on. Yep. No, that's I think a wonderful way to think about it, Herb. Powerful way to think about it.
Suspended animation. Think of the word animation. It comes from the Latin anima, the soul, that determining life force, that organismic life force that is in us is halted.
Yeah. Well, what that brought to mind for me is that, see, even our addiction was an attempt to solve our dilemma,
100%.
to find freedom. What Jung called it a small S when we were looking for the big S, right? You
Yeah.
know, we were looking for spirit. We were looking for connectedness to that oneness he talked about, right? To something so much bigger. What I think we were moving, trying to find a way to ensure our existence, our wholeness.
Right.
That's what the journey is. That's what the development is moving us towards, is being what you can be, right? That movement towards completion. It's a powerful life force that you see existing in all kinds of forms of life. They keep growing. That plant, you don't have to tell an acorn to become an oak tree. It will grow in that direction if it has the right conditions. Well, we never had the right conditions, so we got stuck at a certain point. It's like that acorn fell too close to the tree and it never got the sunlight it needed. So it's never going to grow to its full potential.
Yeah.
Look at Bowen said, this is one reason why we have to move away from our families. I mean, if you stay too close to your family, you can never grow yourself. And he's probably right most of the time on that. But this is the dilemma. So then when I am turning to my addiction as the solution, there's no force moving me this way. Now I'm using that force to realize what I'm doing right now. See, that's the funny thing about a growth force. It's like miracle growth. You put it on weeds, it grows weeds. If you put it on a healthy bush, it grows the healthy bush. It's going to grow wherever you attach it. And see, that's the problem, is when I try to, develop a concept of who I should be, I'm going to do that 100%. I wasn't a half-ass alcoholic and addict. I went to any lengths. I know most people, whether they're eating disorder, I worked with some eating disorder patients. They would have 5 or 6, 7-Elevens they would stop to because they didn't want the person to think they were overeating. Now, they were 200 pounds when they walked in the place. And when they're buying, 2 bags of chips and a 6-pack of cola, the guy might suspect that their eating, habits are not that helpful, but they would have 4 or 5 stops in order to get the food they needed when they went home. That's going to any lengths. That's exactly what I did with booze. That's exactly what I did with drugs. We will become the best that we can be in whatever we're doing. It's just, this is where our awareness of what we're doing and how we're doing it and what kind of existence we're creating becomes so important for us to guide our life in the right direction, to find the right trajectory for our life. It's powerful, isn't it, Herb?
Yeah. And that's why we need help, lots of help from different resources too. There's not just one. There's a variety of resources depending on our age and stage in recovery and our own personal growth.
Bill said it in the letter, right? We know we're on this merry-go-round, but we don't know how to get off.
Yeah.
We can see at some point in our recovery, we get honest enough with ourselves that we see that we're stuck, but we don't know how to get out of that impasse. Emotional sobriety provides a lot of information and techniques and methodology to help you break that impasse. This is Rollo May, and this is the first step towards our freedom. He says, freedom is thus not the opposite of determinism. He says, freedom is created by the individual's capacity to know that he is the determined one. You got to get this, to know that I am letting my shoulds run my life. I am letting my unconscious expectations or claims and demands, my unhealthy dependence, it runs my life. He says, if I become aware of that, then I can pause between the stimulus and response and throw my weight, however slight it might be, on one side of one particular response among several possible ones. I like to say we can let the best of us talk for the rest of us.
I hope you can hear that. The best in me manages the worst in me. I mean, at the very simplest level, we don't need God in that equation or sentence. I'm not dismissing it. I'm just saying, keep it really that simple, because that Alan used again, a sophisticated word, and I don't want to have us overlook it, agency. All right. What that means is I have power. I have responsibility to exercise that power. The thing that makes me specifically human is that I have free will. Now, the whole point of step one is I don't with regard to addiction. And I really don't with regard to unmanageability on my own power. I need to connect to some force, be in partnership. That's the word we're using today a lot, and I love it. To be in partnership with this power, but I have the agency, I have the responsibility, I have the power. Oh, and I love what he said, to throw our weight.
Yes.
That's all.
Yep.
There's the influence. We're not controlling it, but we're placing our thumb on the scale.
There it is. There it is. And you know, and you're saying it so well, because what just came to mind as you said this, see, when I'm aligned with my false self, I'm powerless. Now I'm determined by that the shoulds that have come out of that false self concept. What happens with step one is I realize as long as I keep alignment to that, I'm powerless and my life is unmanageable. As soon as I shift now to being aligned with what Herb and I like to say is reality, or your true self, now you discover a new power that heretofore you could not recognize because you never saw that you had both sides, a true self and a false self. You were fully identified with who you were. You didn't fool yourself.
That's the surrender of step one.
Yes.
The surrender of step one is almost involuntary. It's an implosion in light of our experience of defeat.
Implosion is a good word. I like to call it a deconstruction of the schema that was generated by our false self. Now, that's very psychological. That's very psychological, but it really describes an experience. We are deconstructing our reliance on all of the principles, concepts, ideas, emotions generated by our false self. As Jung said, this is what a vital spiritual experience does, and now presents us with a whole new possibility of concepts.
Well, that's the thing. It may not be the deconstruction, but it's the challenge that allows us to go into a process of deconstruction.
That furthers that, right? That's that unraveling of that whole process begins, though, with that moment. It's like we just put a little crack in that door that Bill talked about.
Dr. Tebow said about Bill Wilson, he got it right, absolutely right. He was a psychiatrist that worked with Bill, both personally as well as in the construction of the early development of Alcoholics Anonymous, Dr. Harry Tebow. And he said, Bill got it right. The first 9 steps are for the deflation of the ego at death. That's what we're talking about. The deflation of the ego, the humility through humiliation, that what we've been doing hasn't been working and we need help and we need to do things differently. He said, but the deflation of the ego at death, but the ego has an uncanny way of regenerating itself and we fall asleep. It's human nature. It's not really our fault in that sense. It's our structure. This is how we're built. We get to breathe and relax and fall into a habit, that default position of unhealthy or healthy habits even, but we become unconscious. We fall asleep. And the whole point of it is to continue, first of all, to wake up and then to continue to stay awake. Our beliefs are the lenses through which we look. And the whole point of the therapy and the whole point of the fourth step is to take a look at the lens through which we're looking. Because if the lens is distorted, our perceptions will be distorted. We can't, that's what all we see, the lie that we've believed all our life. And to try harder is our solution. But if you're seeing distortion, just to try harder is going to just be more self-defeating. And so this is where the 10th step comes in the 12 and 12. Bill says, when we're disturbed, it's a spiritual axiom, there's something amiss with me. It's the blinking light. You're out of water, Herb. You're out of juice, Herb. You're out of, your tires are flat, or whatever. The right door is open. Whatever the signal is saying, something's amiss with reality. Be conscious of it.
So this leads us to looking at how we unpack these things. So this is what Herb just said, that a spiritual axiom, every time we're disturbed, no matter what the cause, there's something wrong with us. We are putting the focus on the right issue. We are putting the focus on an issue that can make a difference rather than focusing on things that are irrelevant, right? The other stuff we focus on, when I blame you, that's not going to help me deal with what's going on, or if I blame myself. But when I try to figure out what's off with me, I like that word better than wrong.
Correct.
You know, Herb referenced that a minute ago. What's missing here? What's off with me?
Yeah.
You know, what am I doing to create this experience? See, that's the thing. I don't want us to shame ourselves.
Correct.
Right? I just want us to be able to observe what we're doing and start to strive to understand it more and unpack this. That's why we're on this course. So this is the way Brandon says, so long as an individual denies the reality of his condition, he cannot proceed to alter it, cannot achieve healthy changes in his personality. And see, this is the problem. Blame contributes to denial. When I'm blaming, I am creating a consciousness that does not allow me to see the truth, my truth.
Well, I'm also giving up agency. I'm giving up any sense that I can do anything about it.
I'm making
Dad, you need to change in order for me to be okay. Wife, you need to change in order for me to be okay. Well, that's just not going to happen.
Right. That's right. It's not going to happen. So Fritz says it this way: if you take responsibility for what you're doing to yourself, how you produce your symptoms, how you produce your illness, how you produce your existence, you get in touch with yourself, and then your growth begins. Then you can start to integrate these things in our life, as Herb was talking to you about before. I love this, is what Bill says in step 11 when he's talking about, right? He says, self-searching is the means by which we bring new vision, hear that, a new vision. We're looking through a corrected lens. Yeah. We're grinding a new lens that now meets the deficiency in our consciousness so that we're able to see reality as it is, not through that distorted lens that we've been using. Now we can take new action and grace. Right? Grace to me is connected to that humility that we've been talking about. So, emotional sobriety requires a development of your ability to do this self-searching, this inward searching. And the things that you want to bring with your self-searching and your inward searching that are going to help your discovery and are going to help, you know, really turn this into, once again, enhancing your encounter with reality is openness, willingness. Bill talks about willingness is just putting that crack in the door, having a reasonable doubt that maybe there's something off with me. That's why I'm getting upset. It might not be the other person. There might be something I need to look at. Even that reasonable doubt opens that door. Curiosity. What is it? What might that be? What might be going on with me that I'm having such a strong reaction to this when things don't go my way? then we start to discover, right? We get excited about the things we're discovering and surprised at times. My God, I never connected this. And then we develop this awe about our life. My goodness, that I can understand what's going on with me and start to create some new possibilities. That's to me where the excitement comes in on all this work. It is tough, it's painstaking. At times it's going to be difficult, but the rewards are incredible.
And once you begin being surprised and having the experience of change, once you begin, quite frankly, you get hooked.
Yeah.
Because you know it's possible. And I think you have a phrase, Alan, that I love about infinite possibilities. Perhaps you could mention.
Well, that's what it is that recovery is about discovering new possibilities. And Herb says you get hooked on it. See, that's why this stuff works both ways. The false self spirals us down.
Yeah.
Trying to control situations, manage things, manage people. You know, it's all about if I'm in control, I'll be okay, which we know results in a total disaster. Once we let go of that and start to go the other way, the great thing about this is it spirals up. Now we start to become what we can be. Now we start to actualize ourselves. Now we start to develop really what we've been calling on Thursday nights, authentic self-esteem. Self-esteem that is based on a humility. Not based on some idea of who we have to be, but it's based on acceptance of ourselves that's based on a sense of humility. It's so exciting. I mean, look, I've been doing this for 50 years. I'm more excited about it now than I was 50 years ago. Exactly. And Herb can testify to that. He's seen my growth with this stuff. He brought me a few things about spirituality that just opened up my world unbelievably. So, and I've been sprinting ever since. So here's the self-searching. Here's the inward searching. This is Virginia Satir, pioneer in family therapy. She goes, when something goes wrong, I try to make a picture in my mind of a big circle, and I put myself in the middle of that circle. And then I ask myself, what part in my problems are being created by my thoughts, by my fears, by my expectations, by my interpretations of what I think just went on? We could also say by my projections of what I'm projecting into the situation. And then she says, and her last one is so critical. What part of my problem is being created by my lack of faith to be able to grow? Meaning that if I let go and don't control this situation, can I have faith that I can learn how to cope with it then? She was brilliant.
Bill had a similar insight when he talks about in step 4, the fear inventory. He said, we have fear because we don't trust. We have fear because we don't trust. Now, he glibly, but accurately, but glibly says, trust in God. But quite frankly, in the context of what we're talking about, is a lack of trust in life itself, a lack of trust in myself, which is more relevant, and a lack of trust of other people. Now, trust is never given, it's earned, but the point here is that if you want to reduce the fear, proportionally you need to have an experience of increasing the trust. It's a reciprocal relationship, like a teeter-totter. They're not mutually exclusive. If you have fear, you don't have trust. If you have trust, you don't have fear. No, that's just not human. No, it's a reciprocal relationship, like a teeter-totter. The more trust you have, the less fear. The more fear you have, the less trust. That's all. So if you want to decrease your fear, you need to learn how to attempt to trust yourself at the very beginning here.
And where that becomes incredibly important is, I see a lot of people try to put their trust into things that are not trustworthy.
Yeah.
If you trust yourself to never make a mistake, forget it.
Right.
You'll never trust yourself. If you trust yourself to make a mistake and really go to school and learn from it, now you become trustworthy with yourself.
Yeah.
If you trust someone else to be perfect, they're going to fail you every damn time, because nobody out there
or
is
to
gonna
provide your needs, right?
or if you trust someone that they're going to take care of you better than you take care of yourself.
Right.
See, a lot of people go into love and marriage thinking that it's a mutual dependency society, and that we're going to get together and just take care of each other. Doesn't work like that. Relationships grow people. They grow you to become more of what you can be, not to become more dependent on someone. Because I've seen it. Look, people come to me all the time. I was doing a session with someone the other night. He came into this marriage thinking that marriage meant that his wife was going to meet all of his needs, and he became a child. And now he, instead of him being her partner, he's this little boy that's just throwing temper tantrums all over the place. And then when mommy doesn't do what he wants, he goes and acts out. Well, great. That doesn't make a marriage. That makes a mess. Is what it's making.
Right.
I told him, you guys haven't been married. They look at me, what do you mean? Yeah, we got married. And I said, no, you didn't. Oh, yeah, you guys got a paper, but you don't have any idea what marriage looks like. I mean, you can't get married, just isn't what the paper does. It's how we are with each other. If I take responsibility for myself, then I and encourage you to do the same. Now we got a foundation to build a marriage on. Very different stuff. Love in our society is fused with dependency in a terribly unfortunate way. So the spot check inventory we've been talking about, here is the grid you're going to use, and this will take us to our first break. So what I want you to do in terms of unpacking this stuff and starting to do your inward searching, your self-searching, is I want you to take a situation. It can be a big one or a little one. It doesn't matter. Bill said, doesn't matter how big of a deal it is, because they're going to all start to reveal everything. Just like when I did step 4. What I started to see when I did step 4 was my selfishness, self-centered. It was all about me all the time. That's what created every one of the issues I was having. So it doesn't matter what situation, but take something that upsets you. I think the bigger upset you go for, the more you're going to get out of it, but it's your choice. And you know, none of you are going to be forced to share anything. When we invite people to share what you've written about, you decide yourself. So you decide how vulnerable you're willing to be or not, etc. So the first thing you're going to do is going to describe an upsetting event. I'll give you a case of point from my practice. This fellow comes home from a meeting. He just got his 6-month chip. He walks in the door. It's a Thursday night. His wife is sitting on the couch watching Bones. Walks in the door and says, "Honey, I got my 6-month chip." She looks up very, very briefly, tersely, and says, "So what?" and looks back at the TV. Goes on watching the thing, and he storms up the stairs. That's what happened. He's just describing what happened. How did he respond to this? He was furious with her. What do you mean it's not a big deal to you? How can you just flip me off like that and just go back to watching? I just got 6 months. You know, I was hoping you're going to get up and stand on the table and start doing a dance. Hey, let's celebrate, right? What did it mean to him that she didn't care about his recovery? That she didn't care about him? What did it say about him, right? That he wasn't of value to her. What was his reflected sense of self? Well, because she wasn't celebrating what he had done, his reflected sense of self was that it was meaningless what he was doing. That the meaning for what he was doing was so dependent on how she was feeling about it. What was his underlying expectation? What should she have done? What was she supposed to do to make him feel okay? Well, she was supposed to get up and cheer, be the cheerleader that he had gotten his 6-month chip. Now, what was his unhealthy dependence? Well, his sobriety was, and the value of it for him was dependent on how she felt about it. Now, what he realized in the turnaround when he started to look at it is that he was expecting her to feel the way he wanted her to feel about it, regardless of what her experience was. This was the third 6-month chip he got in the last 18 months. She wasn't about ready to jump on the bandwagon and cheer him. She was trying to protect herself. Her behavior wasn't saying anything about him. You'll see that when we start to dig into this, it's because we take things personally that things get so crazy for us and that we get so disturbed by it. He couldn't see that what she was doing was trying to take care of herself. Now, it wasn't a great way of taking care of herself. She could have done something like, instead of just flipping him off, said, God, I can see that you really want me to feel really good about this. And, you know, truly inside, I wish I could. But I'm still having a hard time with the disappointment I'm feeling over the last 2 6-month shifts you've had. And I'm afraid that this isn't going to stick. That's my issue. It's not yours. Please don't take it personally, but it's hard for me to give you what you want right now. Now, that if she could have said that, my goodness, right? It would have helped so much. But is he dependent on her saying that? He can also have enough awareness of what's going on, the context of this situation, and put it in context rather than take it and pull it out of context and say she should respond this way because I want her to. See, that's our self-centeredness. But, you know, Don Miguel Ruiz calls it our self-importance. You know, we make ourselves so personally important, like everything's about us and people should do what we want them to do. That this is such a high degree of selfishness. You know, Dr. Christopher Lasch says our culture just promotes this kind of consciousness, that it's all about us. It's a culture of narcissism, not narcissistic personality disorder. That's a whole different thing. Narcissism is just overly focused on the self, that it's all about me. So this grid that I've developed, these columns I developed, is a way for you to do a spot check inventory. Now, my experience with this is at beginning, I had to write these things out, had to make them very, very conscious, had to go through them. As I've practiced this, it becomes pretty quick. Now I can run through this very fast. But what we want to do, we're going to give you a 20-minute break right now. I want you to sit down and do some writing. This is a workshop, which means you do work. and this is your work. So go ahead and take some time. I will leave this screen up during this break, so you'll have this to refer to. You've got, I believe, in the PDF that she sent out, a bit of an updated version of this. It's essentially the same. Herb and I will see you. It is now 2:33 my time, so it's what, 11:33 your time?
Yes.
Why don't we get back at 5 minutes to noon Pacific Standard Time?
And be as specific as you can be.
That's the key, Herb. Say that again. Tell them
You
that.
really do need to be as specific in terms of your thoughts and your feelings and your specific, not just general vague terms. Get right down into the nitty-gritty. The more specific you can be in your writing, the more powerful will be the experience with it.
Okay, we'll see you in about 20 minutes.
All right. Thanks, Alan. I'm back, and I'm assuming Dr. Berger will be back here in a minute. There he is. Looks like it might be cold there as it is here. I think you're muted, Alan.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. So we trust that few people have their hands up to work already. So I think Carol's got her hand up first. So we'll bring you into, if you're going to do this, you have to have your camera unmuted. If you're not willing to unmute your camera, or I'm sorry, the video, if you're not willing to have your video on, then we're not going to bring you in.
That sounds like the Marine I know.
Well, there's information that I can't get by just hearing your voice. So
Interesting. Yeah, sure, of course.
That's true.
so Carol, can you get more light on you, because your face is all dark?
Yeah, you know what? Actually, can you take who's next in line? Lou, and I'll go
Yeah.
second.
Okay,
Thanks.
bye. Rainey, you'll bring people in so I don't have to worry about it?
Yes, Nan is working on that, and yep, we'll get it done.
Okay. Hey, Lou.
Okay, hey, yeah, column one. Something happened that I haven't seen my two kids, Joey and Stephanie, for 10 years. And so Stephanie wanted to move in together, which we did. And so she lived here for 3 months. I came here in March of 22 in Oregon. And so we moved in together, and then she stayed here for 3 months and then moved out. She didn't move out, all her stuff's here, but she moved on and in with a boyfriend. And so she only comes here for the last, I don't know, since June, to go out to dinner with me. And so that really upset me. And so column two, well, what did it mean to me? Well, I was very, very sad, and I felt sorry for her. Because we came here and the decision was to live together. So, it should have at least been here. He should have stayed here with me for at least a year. And so what did it mean to me? So I felt that, now nobody wants me, maybe they don't really care for their dad. Reflection of what it did to me, I felt like nobody wanted me anymore.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, you took it very personally.
yeah, I did.
Which means you made it all about you, Lou, right?
Yeah,
How old is your daughter?
she's 20.
All right,
And,
column three is, what did you do for column three?
Column three is she was supposed to be with her dad, and she was supposed to ask questions that I didn't get to ask my dad.
Hmm.
I felt that she really cared for me as her dad. Column four, she was supposed to be here.
Well, column four really says, Lou. See, column three for you says, if she would have stayed with me and asked me the questions that I wanted her to ask me, I would have felt connected to her and close to her as her father. So number four, your unhealthy dependence is that my feeling close to her is dependent on what she's doing, not what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
No,
No, say that again.
no,
It's
it's
like-
not connected to it at all.
It's like, that would,
Right.
I'll say it again, Lou. So column four is what is your unhealthy dependence? Right? What is your claim? So your unhealthy dependence is that your closeness with your daughter is depending on her following the rules you have on how she's supposed to behave.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotcha.
You see what I'm saying? You set up a
Yeah.
thing that if she behaves this way, then we've got a good father-daughter relationship. If she doesn't, then I'm Swiss cheese. She doesn't care about me. Our relationship is crap.
Yeah,
I'm resentful. I moved up here expecting that we'd have a chance to be closer,
exactly, yeah.
right? All of that stuff comes from that. Okay. So,
Yeah.
the whole, so that unhealthy dependence about that it's your daughter's behavior that determines your feelings, right? Sets you up to have to focus on what she's doing, not what you're doing. Right? Because everything you just said in terms of what disturbed you is what she did. She broke
Yeah.
the rules.
He's not hearing it.
I think I am.
Yeah,
Well, tell me what it means. What it means. What does it mean to you? What I said so far?
Well, what it means, what you said. Is I had rules, for us living together. For a year. And. So. Putting my, expectations on her, what she's supposed to have done and be doing. Is one of my rules.
Yeah. Yeah. And see what that does is there's no room in this for your daughter. It's just all about your rules and your expectations. And so you can't have a relationship with someone if there's only room for you. See, so let's get to the column number 5. Were you able to put anything there, or was it hard to?
Yeah, I got something here, count 5, number 1. Is to let her make her own decisions and have faith in her.
Oh, almost. That's not far reaching enough. See, so number 5 would be more like the turnaround would be she felt so confident in our relationship that she could go live her life without losing herself in her relationship with me and taking care of me. That I've provided a situation where my daughter could move towards what she wanted rather than put what she wanted on hold. But see, you can't see that and understand it from that point of view when you make it all about you. The good thing is here, she didn't stay with you when she didn't want to. I think that's great. I mean, as a dad, I'd be proud of that.
at the same time, if I heard you correctly, Lou, you indicated that she does join you for dinner once a week.
Yeah.
That's pretty huge, actually.
And see, that's the connection. See, that's why she hasn't written you off. And that's why it's not that she's thrown you away. You've thrown her away. And see, this is the thing that happens with our expectations. We think the other person is doing this, right? Not connecting to us, when what you're doing is disconnecting her or disconnecting from her with all your rules. You can't have a good relationship with your daughter when you're having more of a relationship with your rules than you are with your daughter.
Okay.
See that?
Yeah,
You're making your rules more important than that young lady
and her, yeah.
and her life and her life force, her spirit, her desires.
Well, I am proud of her. I hope she is not involved in any kind of use whatsoever, and I'm really grateful for that.
Right. And now you can even think more that she's not a terrible daughter. She didn't betray you. Had nothing to do with that. You betrayed her when you put those expectations on her.
At the same time, you may have mitigated your own relationship with yourself when you're defining
That's right.
yourself as a man, as a father, depending on their relationship with you rather than your relationship with yourself.
And with them. That's right. Your relationship with them. See, that'll weigh more heavily when you start to get rid of the rules. Because right now you even got yourself in a box that your well-being depends on her.
Yeah,
All right. Well, you're going to be digesting this more. I can see it's still
oh,
filtering in.
definitely, yeah.
All right, Lou. Well, thank you for
Thank you, guys.
taking the risk. That was a big one.
Thank you, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi,
There you are. You're back. I can
I'm
see you.
back. I am back. So this is going to be really sort of raw, right?
Really? What a surprise.
Ah, yeah. I'll try and keep my colorful language as colorful as you'll be expecting. No, just kidding. So I just preface this by asking God to please guide my pen to tell the truth. And so my son was basically a domestic terrorist in our home when he was younger. My husband failed to partner with me or participate in helping me or my daughter. Neither my daughter or myself felt safe, right? The constant conflict and my husband's non-participation, disdain for my request for help fostered so many negative consequences for myself and our kids. That's column 1.
Do you remember a specific incident that happened? Because this is very general.
Yeah, I had to, for one example is he was threatening the property, the house, burning the house down, something
So
like
what
that.
happened? How did that happen? To describe that situation. He came
Why did that
home.
happen?
No, not why. I want you to describe what happened. I'm not interested in the why part. That we'll talk about we'll talk about the meaning that you give to it. But right now you're describing what happened. So what happened that day?
We got in a fight, my son and I.
What did you get in a fight over?
It was probably me asking him to do something. Let's just, yeah.
You can't
That's
remember
very likely.
specifically?
No.
Okay.
No.
So there was something you wanted from him and he didn't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened? What did you do when he refused to do it?
I went, he started threatening. So I went in my room with my
You
daughter.
didn't start threatening. You asked him to do something. He said,
Mhm.
I don't want to do it.
Right.
Then what happened?
I separated myself from him.
What did
and
you say to him when he said he didn't want to do it?
You need to leave and be, I am separating myself from you. You are not coming near us.
Because he said he didn't want to do it, you said that, or that was after it escalated?
Probably around the time it escalated, because
Okay,
what I would have said to him to
get-
not do is to not yell at
Okay, but I'm trying to
his
get at
sister or
what
me.
I'm trying to get at what he reacted to from you that got him to escalate. So it wasn't just,
I
hey,
can't remember what that
okay,
was.
but what are you likely to say to him about that? You've done it before.
He has ODD.
No, we're not talking about what he did. I'm talking about what did you say to him, Carol?
You need to stop berating your sister and me.
Okay, but that was after he escalated. I'm trying to get it. You said I'd
No,
like
he would start with that. He would just
You
go
just said
off.
you asked him to do something. He didn't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you reacted to that. Do you know how you would react to when he would tell
I would yell at him and tell him to leave
well,
us
you
alone.
left that out. See, that's such an
No,
important.
I go into that too.
I know, but I'm trying to get you to just describe what happened.
Okay.
I asked him to do something. He said he didn't want to. What would you yell at him after he'd say he didn't want to? What would you say to him?
What words would I use when I yelled at him?
Yes.
I would be saying to my daughter, this is not us. Your brother's brain works differently.
I'm asking you what you say to your son, not what you said to your daughter. What did you say to your son when you yelled at him? You don't remember? You don't want to?
I don't remember.
Okay, so what typically would you say to him that when you would yell at him? What kinds of things would you yell at him? Would you tell him what a great guy he was? What would you do when he wouldn't cooperate with you?
I'm trying to remember, and it's like really a blank.
Yeah.
Exactly what I would say to him. And I would usually be yelling at him in response to him yelling at me. I didn't start yelling, but I was responsive with yelling.
Well, I think he would say the same thing, that he didn't start by
Okay.
yelling either. See, it's very interesting.
Let's say he had a tantrum.
Were you
right?
nice? No, but you're
No, it wasn't
your head.
nice. No.
Yeah, so see, but that's what you're leaving out. So he didn't do what I want him to do, and then I put him down for it, or I assassinated his character, or I criticized him, or
What would I do? I would probably criticize him and withdraw.
okay, so you'd criticize him. Once you'd criticize him, then he would react to your criticism, and he'd get very hostile and angry.
Yes.
And then you would go into protection mode.
Correct. In this instance that I'm sort of thinking about, I was told by the therapist to call 911 if he starts behaving like this again. So I called 911 and they sent the police and the fire department, right? And they took him aside and to talk to him. And it was also, I think, because he hadn't taken his medication that day, right? Now, I called my husband at the time and asked him to come home, which he did. The police had a conversation with my son for a few minutes, whatever, half an hour, let's say. And then they left. And while this was all happening, I was making dinner. So after everybody left, we sat down, and really, it was always a shit show. We never had family dinners. It was very seldom that this would occur, right? I was trying. And my son started yelling at me again, angry at me for having called the police or 911. And my husband just sat there and didn't do anything.
What did you do when he yelled at you?
What did my husband do?
No.
Or my son?
You.
I was looking at my husband incredulously because the police had just left, because I had felt threatened and unsafe. And he was doing nothing. And so I yelled at my husband and I got up from the table and I left. I didn't leave the house. I just left the room. So like for the part 2, I said, I didn't cope well. I yelled at my son and fought. I said mean things to him and undermined him with my daughter. Yeah, I set up, this was really sick, right? But I set up things of like where she was like making, and this is where she had started developing like a battered women syndrome, making excuses for him. But I would set it up so that like, if somebody talked to me that way, Charlotte, I wouldn't have them in my life. Do you see? So I undermined him with my daughter. I didn't go to God. I felt alone and ashamed because I had no control over my son. I started, one of the other I started eating. I didn't have faith or resilience to deal effectively with anyone. My son felt unsafe in our home because I was not giving him the attention he wanted, but I really think he wanted more attention from my husband. He wasn't getting that, and he was taking it out on me and Charlotte. I wasn't dealing effectively with my daughter. She didn't feel safe.
Yeah.
Myself, I fucking abandoned myself too, or my husband. At one point I said to him, I said, we may have to put him somewhere else, talking about my son. And, you know, I tried everything to get him on board. And anyway, I was really shell-shocked and angry and hurt. I became a betrayed wife and mother. Also, what about that? Well, whatever.
Well,
Should I go to the next column?
no, well, look, it's already, I hope you're listening to yourself, because you already have a whole set of ideas,
Uh-huh.
concepts of what you think happened.
Yes.
And at the best, you know only, I think, very partially of what went on. There are so many pieces that are missing in your consciousness. As Herb talked about earlier, it's so easy to paint ourselves as a victim, and you do that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I did. Yeah.
You do that so readily. So what I'm going to say to you is that what your son was doing was exactly what he learned to do in this family, that you do and that he does. He was doing the same thing you do. Is that when somebody says something to him that he doesn't like, that he goes after him. So he was cooperating. He was cooperating perfectly with what he
He
learned.
was mirroring my behavior.
Exactly. You taught him how to deal with when things don't go your way. You go after someone and make them feel bad about themselves, or you threaten them, and see, that's the piece that doesn't get worked out in this thing. And so even say you did the same thing to your husband, then when he didn't do what you wanted to do, you made him wrong. So here it is. Carol's right. Everybody else is wrong. If everybody just did what Carol wanted them to do, everything would be fine.
Yeah.
And without Carol ever looking at what she's doing. You know, like you said, you started to see some of that behavior that was, like you said, when you started to do that number of bringing your daughter into the whole thing to make them wrong, and enlisting her as your ally.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's a really, really destructive habit that you have, is dealing with when people don't do what you want, putting them down as a way to get them to do it. See, that never works. Never works. People don't do better when they're told how fucked up they are. They just don't. So he was cooperating. He was doing exactly what he learned to do in that family. So when you say I was betrayed by him and by, no, they didn't betray you. Guess who betrayed you? Carol.
Me.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, really, because this all falls on me.
This falls on you. Everybody's responsible for themselves, but to understand what's going on is that he was cooperating. You got to let go of this idea that he was uncooperative. He was cooperating exactly the way people learn to cooperate in his family. Cooperation doesn't always mean that they do things, quote, the right way. They do things the way that they've learned to do. That's cooperation. And that's the best.
It was so extreme, his behavior.
So was yours, dear. So was yours. You see, keep focusing on how extreme his behavior was. You just described a very extreme behavior when you were talking about what you did and the number you did with your daughter as a carom shot towards your son.
Mm-hmm.
That's an extremely acting out your anger.
Yeah,
So that's right. Extreme was part of the deal in this family.
I did not respond well
It's
to his.
it's not that you
Yeah.
didn't respond well. You had a hand in creating it.
For
It's more than
sure.
not responding well. Is you had a
Yeah.
hand in creating it, and you haven't been able to be completely honest with yourself yet because you're so filled with shame about this, and that you're so disappointed in yourself, and you don't even deal with that. See,
Mhm.
you didn't know what to say to him. There was a lot you could have said to him when he talked about you calling the police. If there was more empathy in it, you would say, God, I understand, son. That must have been a horrible experience for you, for you to call the police. And I'm torn about it myself. See, if you would have been able to talk personally with him, but that wasn't going on. Nobody talked at that.
Nobody talked.
Nobody
Nobody
talked like
talked.
that. You couldn't talk that way. No, and you never learned it. And that's all I'm saying is you didn't learn it, but you did bring in a lot of bad habits.
Oh, I did. Yeah.
So your expectation is that he should do the right thing regardless of what I'm doing. He should be reasonable regardless that I am not being reasonable with him. He should be civil with me even though I'm criticizing him or putting him down. That's a big expectation.
That's an unreasonable one.
Completely. Completely. What are you experiencing right now?
I wasn't breathing.
Yes, that's part of it. What else are you experiencing?
Right.
I want to retreat from the focus of the relationship with my son, and I want to go into what my husband didn't do.
Well, of course, you're going to look at what he didn't do, and we're talking about what you didn't
Yeah.
do. We're not talking
Yeah.
about.
I just felt so like, when I felt so out of my pay grade. I had no skills or tools.
I see
I
that.
didn't go to God.
Mhm.
The therapist that I went to, like, and the books that I read were like, you have to take, with the oppositional defiance disorder, you have to take decisive behavior. You
They're
have to
making
take
you a
decisive
victim.
action.
See, everything made you a victim, and that you can't solve that
Uh-huh.
problem when you're not taking responsibility for your contribution to it. So when you don't see that he's cooperating and he's doing the exact same thing that you taught him, there's a whole different way of dealing with it.
Yeah, and I had no fucking resiliency either.
Well, how can you can't be resilient when the problem is what other people are doing? Trying to control them instead of regulating yourself.
Yeah, and I fucking,
No, you didn't do that, and you
I
blamed
abandoned myself. I just I didn't do
you
anything.
didn't know what you were doing.
I really didn't.
And you didn't know that you were so ignorant. I mean, that's the two problems. And so look, this is so you got to look at how this is still showing up in your life today.
It leaks everywhere with my husband.
Got it.
It leaks everywhere with my husband. Less so with my son now. Like, we did a lot of work when he stole my car and totaled it. And he went away to Outward Bound and Intercept program. And, I owned a lot of my stuff with him. Like, I talked about, I didn't deal with this effectively. I was hurtful. You didn't feel loved, and I couldn't respond to that the way you needed me to. And I owned, the stuff that I had laid with my daughter about him, I owned that with him. I just, like, looked
you-
at it, looked at it.
Well, you grabbed hold of many of the important pieces of that. The one that is still most important is I never realized that I taught you how to deal with me.
I did, yeah, I didn't give him that
That's the
one either.
piece that's the most important piece of the whole puzzle. God, I blamed you for what I was teaching you to do. That's terrible. So when a kid cooperates with a parent and the parent puts them down for doing the things that they're taught to do, all a kid can do is go crazy. Do you hear the dilemma that puts the kid in? I taught you to be this way, and now I'm going to criticize you for it. You're wrong because of how you're behaving. But the kid can't say, but you taught me this. This is what you taught me to do. This is how you taught me to deal with it. But you're saying, no, you're wrong because you're behaving that way. But that's what you've taught me. See, that's the dilemma kids thrown in. When they are cooperating with you because of their desire to please, and then they're faulted for that, that's when kids crack up.
Yeah. No. It's a conversation I'm totally willing to have with him, you know, with my son.
Well, I think that's an important one to have. I'll tell you, talk about making an amends. You've done so on some of those other issues, but that's going to the heart of the matter.
Yeah, I want to clean that up
You
for
need
sure.
to.
And I've asked him, like, since then, like, tell me about what your childhood was like. I'm curious, you know, let me hear what your experience was, you know, just to start a conversation, keep a conversation
Well,
going.
it's a better way to keep a conversation going by starting out with making him aware of what I just made you aware of.
Sure.
Say, I am realizing what the bind I put you in when I got mad at you for you reacting the exact way I taught you to react, because that's what I was doing. The thing I was upset with you about was what I was doing to everybody. And then when you do it, I didn't know how to deal with it other than do what I always did, was to fault you for it. That had to drive you nuts.
I was so crazy.
You were. Yes, you were.
I was so fucking
Oh,
crazy.
yes, you were. You definitely, that's the definition of insanity, what you were doing. Wasn't soundness of mind at all. Not at all. And
I
look,
had no soundness.
this is graduate level understanding, right? This is not
I guess
low-hanging
you're telling,
fruit.
yeah. Mhm.
This is not low-hanging fruit. Most people wouldn't think about it like this. But see, this is what, when we talk about taking responsibility for creating our existence, and especially when we're a parent, we've got to realize that our kids are cooperating even when it doesn't look like they are. But we can't see it because the last thing we would think that I've taught them how to do that. We just can't see that. It's too hard. It's too heavy a dose of reality, I guess, to take in.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move on.
To read
Can I-
more or to somebody else?
Well, could I ask, so now what? Alan?
Well,
So-
now what? She's got an amends to go make and start to
Mm.
own
Nice.
this and go back and create a whole new narrative. I mean, the narrative you have of what happened is way off base. You got yourself victimized. You've got yourself, I mean, that's why it's hard to find any personal agency in this, because you haven't gotten down to what you did and taking responsibility for your contribution. How could he respond any other way? I never showed him. He was doing exactly what I did. When people didn't do what he wanted them to do, he got mad at him, and then he either put him down or threatened him. Same deal.
So really, and we could talk about this at another time too, but the other part of this is about my relationship with my husband.
Yeah,
That's the bigger
there's
part
probably
at this point.
but probably those expectations too.
Oh yeah,
That there's a way that
I've
you
been punishing
created
for
a connection.
years. Mhm.
Well, that's right. In a similar way that you were punishing your son. See, that's the other
Mhm.
part of this. That you've got a side of you that when people don't do, you really want to punish them
Mhm.
and make them feel horrible about themselves. As though
Horrible. Mhm.
somehow making somebody feel horrible is going to get them to come to you and give you what you want. But
If
see,
that-
that's the same thing your son did. It's the same thing. I'll make you feel like shit to try to get what I need from you.
Yeah,
It's
I do that
terrible.
shaming stuff. Yeah.
Oh my God. It's a terrible habit. And
Oh
it's
my
been
God.
it's been
A
terrible
curse.
curse that you suffered from terribly, because you end up very alone, you end up very disconnected, you end up alienated. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next person. Thank you, Carol.
Excuse me. I'm getting triggered by a lot of this. How do I stay safe? I didn't expect this. And it's just upsetting to me.
Who are you?
My name is Myra.
You want to come in here for a minute, Myra?
No,
Well, that's the way you could feel safe, is to deal with it, not just announce it. So you asked, how can I feel safe? I said, come in and talk about it.
I could come in with you.
All right, come on in. Judy, we'll get to you in 1 minute.
Okay.
Rainey, will you bring Myra in?
You know, I'm really trying. I can't seem to find spotlight for her. I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah. I'm starting to cry. So it just upset me a lot. That's all. I'm sorry.
It's not that it's all, you don't need to apologize. It's bringing up something for you that you need to look at.
Myra, could you raise your hand for me? That'll
Yeah.
help.
Her picture's not in.
All right. I could put my picture up.
There you go.
Myra, we have to have your picture on for us to be able to spotlight you.
There I am.
There you go. Perfect. Thank you.
It just reminded me a lot about my childhood and the violence and the unfairness and being picked on and that type of thing. And you know, we had an authority figure against a younger person, and the younger person, you know, and I get it. I mean, we don't do good things, you know, we act out, you know, but I just felt that it was just very, very hard to hear his side. He had no side. And it would just made me feel like that no one's going to save me, you know? And that's what triggered me.
Of course, that's a very painful experience. And
The painful experience for both people, you know.
well, you're right, for both people, but you're empathizing a lot with him. You
Yeah.
felt that. So who was the parent you felt that with?
And my mother.
All right, so what do you want to say to your mother right now?
I felt that no matter what I said to her,
No, talk
Or
to
what
her. Don't, you're talking about her. Talk
my
to her.
mother said,
What's,
that-
no, she's here in spirit right now. You just brought her in the room. What do you want to say to your mom right now?
that she was wrong about.
Oh, no, not you.
Okay,
She
that
was
you're wrong about.
There
me.
you go.
That
Go
you're
ahead.
wrong about me. I'm not a bad person. I'm really a good person. I'm not stupid. I don't mean to embarrass you or upset you or do anything to hurt you.
There you go.
And I just wish you know, you would just like hear me and just listen to me and just hug me and not leave me alone. And let me vent for myself because I got into a lot of trouble. Well,
Now be your mom and respond to Myra.
I would just say you were just very difficult.
You're a difficult
You know,
child, Myra. So say that,
You were
Myra.
a difficult child. You couldn't get your grades. You couldn't get your schooling. You stuttered a lot. You weren't like the other kids that were just succeeding. You did things that embarrassed me. You know, you were fat. You were you were constantly eating, stuffing yourself, taking things. I tried so hard with you, but
So you're saying to your daughter, you weren't the child that I expected you to be.
No,
So say that
no.
out loud. Just say that out loud.
You weren't the child that I expected you to be.
Okay, now be Myra again and respond to that.
And in my heart of hearts, I tried so hard. And I just, there was just so many things wrong with me. I was, because of the abuse, that's all.
Well, what was wrong with you is that you didn't,
Ugh,
your mom couldn't accept you as you were,
yeah,
right?
right.
Good
And I
thing.
wanted to be
And you
close to
wanted-
her.
Oh God, you wanted it so bad, Myra, and it's so
I
sad.
did.
It's so sad. It's see just what's coming up for you.
Yeah.
You know, it's not whatever you called it before, the abuse. It's more your grief.
Mm.
It's your sadness of what wasn't, and that's understandable, sweetie. You missed something very important for yourself. But here's the important thing right now. You've got to find a way to give that to yourself today.
Yeah.
And you're not doing it. I can tell it, and we don't have time to go into it, but your work is on starting to accept yourself more, and you aren't there. And you got to get to work on that. That's the working point for you today, because your mom's gone. You're not going to get it from her, but it doesn't mean it's not a possibility. But it's got to be something that grows from within you. And you've got to cultivate something that's not cultivated in you, the ability to accept. You never had anybody teach you that. And that's what the working point is, okay? I'm
Thank you.
glad you raised your hand. All right, we're going to go back to
I
Judy.
feel better. Thank you.
All right, I know you do. Take care. Okay, Judy.
Okay,
There.
I'm just going to describe, I think I want to describe the turnaround, but describe what happened. My daughter emailed me a long time ago and said she didn't want a relationship with me. And my ex-husband has a relationship with my daughter and gets photographs from her. And so that's the dilemma. That's describe what happened and describe my reaction. My action was I cried a lot. I was jealous. I was angry. I was judgmental. And I took on the responsibility for not being a good mother and a good wife. And I wore that. And I was I said I was a complete failure and I could not get on my emotional feet. And then I said,
So you blamed yourself, right?
absolutely.
You turned all that
And-
energy on yourself.
right. And it was all about me, like
Yeah, right on.
focus
That's
was
right.
on me. I imploded in
imploded.
me. And what I said, my should was for I could not continue to grow as a human being in a relationship with anybody and even myself until this relationship with my daughter was healed. So, so I wrote an amends to her and I reached out and there was no response. It was too much pain for me to touch. It was just, I couldn't, I was afraid of the pain. And so I stopped talking to my ex-husband. I stopped looking at pictures because she would send him pictures. He would send them to me.
You avoided.
And I just ran away because I didn't want to touch the pain. And I deprived myself of watching her and her children because I didn't want to feel the pain. Identify unhealthy dependence. I'm okay. I would be okay if my daughter and I were in a relationship. That's the unhealthy. The turnaround is
No, there's a little more to it. It's I would be okay if my daughter had the relationship with me I want her to have.
the expectations.
It's on her. You see, the onus gets shifted to her. That's the unhealthy dependence. Our relationship, like what Lou was doing, his relationship with her daughter depended on her daughter behaving a certain way. Your connection to your daughter depended on your daughter having a certain feeling about you and, attitude towards you. Right. So, all right,
And
but you're warm.
would-
You were really warm. Okay.
Okay.
Keep going.
The turnaround is that I'm learning that being in pain is part of reality. And if I experience what's available to me, which are these photographs that my ex-husband sent me, and not rejecting that and take responsibility for what's available to me today, then I could start to breathe, and I could start to let go of the anger and the hurt so that I can do that. And I've been doing.
Yeah, so the way I would rephrase it for you is to say, you have found a way to have a relationship on her terms, not yours.
Exactly,
And
without the control.
You've accepted her. Yes, there you go. See, you had to let go. That's the unhook Bill talks about in his letter. You had to unhook your expectations and meet her where she's at.
Right,
And so now you're having a relationship based on her conditions, which, yeah, it's got some limitations to it, but it's a lot more than you had before.
exactly. And now I can enjoy seeing her kids grow up and everything without the resentment and without my expectations and stuff. So what I've been doing,
Yeah, fantastic.
when I did it, there was this week, this is all new. I mean, you know that. But this week there was a physical release in me, in my body, that I could start to look at different things. I'm not only looking at this relationship differently, but I'm looking at so much around me differently. And then I was in a group this week, and the person said, what would a loving mother do? They could send a birthday card. They could do that. It doesn't matter whether she responds to that, but that could be then I'm out of the box. That's what I feel. I feel like I'm getting out of the box.
That's freedom.
And
That's emotional freedom. See,
that's right.
That's the freedom. That's your feelings are depending on your attitude, your vision, your understanding, and how you're meeting that experience.
And I'm not only, yes, but also not having the fear to just be who I am with other people. I was with my niece this week. I said, I can't believe I just said that. She said, yeah, I never thought I'd see you do that. But it's just there's something different inside. It's a physical release. And I can't explain it.
You hear the surprise in you. It's so wonderful. You're
Yeah.
so surprised.
I am.
My God, I know. See, that's the wonderful thing about this inward searching and this self-discovery is
Yeah.
we get surprised at ourselves. It's like we meet ourselves for the first time.
I didn't even know I could say that kind of stuff. You know?
I know you didn't. Trust me, I probably know that better than most. I do know that. Yes.
But, between Herb and Ellen, it's just beginning. I feel like it's just beginning. The door is a little bit open. There's some light coming in, and there's hope. So I just wanted to share that.
What a change, Herb, from where Judy was like a month or 2 months ago when she came in and shared. I mean, my God, Judy, wonderful.
Herb said, you got to get some new glasses. Ellen said,
that.
You're ignorant. I went, thanks, guys. This is wonderful. But anyway, thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, this is remarkable, though, Herb, isn't it? You just see, right? Here's the process, right? That you and I talked about is how you get that door cracked just a little bit with willingness.
Yeah.
And what starts to happen.
Yeah.
I got new glasses.
You did. And they look wonderful on you.
Appreciate it.
Hey, Brandy. Got to unmute you, Brandy. There we go. Oh, you're muted again.
There. Okay.
There.
Hi. Okay. So what happened was I had a conversation with my husband and I was telling him that I felt like my emotional bank account was empty and I needed him to fill it up.
How did that go?
I needed him to fill it up the way I wanted him to fill it up.
Oh, listen, I filled that in real quick for you, so I got that part. Yes, dear.
Yeah, I'm seeing just how
And then
freaking
how did he
codependent I am.
Yeah, how did he respond to that?
He just shook his head. Yeah, kind of. He walked out into the garage to do something then, and yeah, and then it just, so what happened was that he didn't fill up my emotional bank account the way I wanted him to.
You experienced that as another withdrawal, didn't you?
Yep. Yep. So I responded with withdrawing and isolating and anger. And I was in the food. So to me, it meant that he didn't love me and our marriage and relationship wasn't important to him. I'm getting these next two a little confused. What did it say about you and what was your reflected sense of self? Because I feel like it's the same answer to both of those. Like I
It is, that's right.
felt
Yeah.
like I was unworthy of his love, time, and attention. So, and then the next column, so in my mind, he should have, committed to a regular date night. And I don't know, I feel like I should preface this with, like, I do feel like a lot of these are not unrealistic expectations of a marriage in general. So I'm like, why can't our marriage have these things that every marriage should have, right? Like basic communication, and regular date night, talk to me, ask me how my day was, what I wanted, to sit next to me and hold my hand, to tell me that he appreciates me and all that I do for our family, to like my cooking, because my husband's Filipino. So, he doesn't always like my cooking and wants some Filipino food. And so I take that personally. And so basically I wanted him to stop what he was doing and pay attention to me.
You were close. It's a little more than that. It's basically you want him to stop being who he is and to be what you want him to be. It's even more than just that. See, it's a total, just like you feel there's a total rejection of you in it, there's also a rejection of him that you're projecting at this point.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, all those, what you called reasonable expectations of a marriage, get ready. They were all hokey. They're not reasonable at all. They're
husbands and wives shouldn't talk to each other.
Oh, no, they should. But the
date
problem
night?
is they don't know how to talk to each other, and that's why they don't have conversations. Not because they shouldn't, is because they don't know how to have a conversation. When you start off a conversation by telling someone they're not filling your cup, all he can do is get defensive because you're criticizing him.
All
So
they
that's
can do
why.
is go to the garage.
Oh my God, that's the safe place. Let me go talk to the motorcycle or the car. It's not going to criticize me. I mean, he's just hiding out. He doesn't know how to deal with that, just like you don't know how to deal with it. So the idea that people in a marriage should talk to each other, that presupposes they have the capacity to have a healthy conversation. Not many people do. The truth is that most people have the same kind of marriage you got. You could walk into a restaurant. It's a remarkable experiment. Next time, whenever you go out, if you go to a Filipino restaurant, sit there and watch, look around and see who's talking to each other. And I'll bet if you go up to the people that are talking to each other, they're early dating in the relationship. They're just getting to know each other. The other ones that are sitting there with their chairs turned and not saying much to each other through the thing, they're married.
Or they're on their phone.
Then the issue is, well, why is that? Is it that they don't have anything to say? No. There's a lot that they have to say to each other. The problem is that when they tried to talk about it in the way they've been talking about it, it falls flat because of the way they're talking about it. They don't have the skills based on this platform we're talking about to be able to have a conversation that keeps you connected during the discussion. That you end up alienating each other, not intentionally. None of this is done because you're bad. You're just, like Herb and I love the word ignorant. And that's not a put down. It's just a description of our state of being is incomplete.
We don't know.
We don't know. That's ignorance. It's not a terrible thing. I used to be ashamed of how ignorant I was, and it was an expectation I was supposed to know everything.
Right.
But I don't. But see, all those ideas about what you're supposed to have. Could you imagine how the conversation would have went had you gone to him and said, wow, I'm missing you. And I realize I don't know how to connect with you in a good way, honey. And I'm so sorry for that, because I think you could be a wonderful partner to me. And I don't know how to find that connection with you. Do you miss me too sometimes? Do you hear the difference?
Yeah.
Wow, that might start a conversation, right? Because it's a different startup. If my startup is to criticize you, this was the brilliant insight Gottman had. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse in a marriage are: we start out by criticizing a person to try to get what we want. They end up getting defensive. Of course, most people are going to. Nobody feels good enough. We talked about self-esteem in the beginning. To not get defensive, you'd have to be okay with yourself. Most people are going to try to defend themselves and say, I'm not as bad a person as you think I am. And so they're going to start quibbling with you about it. Well, where does that go? Well, that eventually, when those are the 2 ways of communicating, it creates a lot of contempt. We start to resent the other person and not like them because they're not filling our bank account. They're not making deposits. And then eventually, when that contempt gets expressed, we end up withdrawing from each other and distancing ourselves. So the 4 horsemen are criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and withdrawal. That is the description of most marriages, not what you said before. And that happens because people don't know how to have a healthier relationship with themselves in their experience. They don't know how to enjoy themselves. They don't know how to express themselves without putting somebody else down. And if you don't have that skill, you're not able to have a great connection with someone else and enjoy them as they are. If you can't enjoy yourself as you are, enjoy them as they are and encourage their full expression of themselves. So that will fill you up better than food.
So could you, Alan, could you spontaneously do the antidote to each of those 4 horsemen? What's the opposite?
Well, the first one, instead of criticism, is to stay focused on what you want and to communicate it in a way that invites your partner in. Like I said, when I was parroting you, Brandy, I miss you. I'd really like to be closer than you, and I don't know how to do it. I mean, that's so much more appealing and so much more inviting. If my partner responds critically to me and I'm getting defensive and I'm doing the work that we're doing here, then I can say, God, I'm aware of how defensive I'm feeling in what you just said to me. And I don't want to be defensive. I'd like to be here for you, but I'm having a lot of trouble. I'm feeling like I've got to protect myself or explain that I'm not a bad person. So that person can maybe not respond defensively, but describe the struggle they're having and bring their partner in. I'm wondering, honey, if you could say what you're saying to me in a way that isn't as harsh, because I want to hear what you're feeling. I'm just having a hell of a time doing it. You see that antidote, Herb?
Yes.
I can ask that. I'd like you to soften up the way you're talking to me. The third one is if I'm feeling contempt towards someone, we unpack resentments as beginning with demands and claims. It means somebody's not doing what I think they should do to make me feel okay. And so I need to realize that my contempt is a result of how I'm functioning, not what they're doing. And the last one, which I've been beating the drum for quite some time now, is this idea, excuse me, I want to take off my shirt. The heater just kicked on and it's warm in here. Is staying connected through trouble, not withdrawing. Staying connected and adding more self. Well, what does adding more self look like? Everything I just said about expressing myself, talking about my experience, not criticizing the other person, but staying focused on what I'm experiencing, what I want, is me adding more self. So those are the four, antidotes, if you will, or ways that we can start to work with those four horsemen of the apocalypse that show up in every relationship.
Yeah, be clear on what I want, be clear on what I need, be clear on what I'm willing.
And for me to take responsibility for what I need. Look, you don't, my partner, I don't have a vision of a marriage where my partner is responsible to fill my bank account. It's up to me to make deposits in it. I'm not making a deposit when I'm dependent on someone, Brandy. See, that's the first thing, is when you are sitting there putting it on him that it's his job to fill your bank account, you've just went bankrupt. I mean, you bankrupt yourself, girl. And then you blame it on him. How dare you not give me these things that you should give because of you or married? That's not marriage. Jesus Christ, marriage is not about rules. You can't have a marriage when you have so many damn rules. There can't be room for people when all there are is room for rules. Let's get rid of the damn rules. And that doesn't mean anarchy. It just means let's have a more real, authentic relationship with each other.
One of the major lessons in the book by Chuck C., A New Pair of Glasses, is his mantra. He went to his family, he went to his work, he went to his clients, and he said, how can I help you do what you need to get done?
Yeah.
And
that's because he wanted a more of a richer connection. So he started, instead of saying what they weren't doing, he focused on what he could do to increase that connection. Right. The way that Stephen Covey talks about it, it's so much fun because, on Thursday nights now, and we'll put the connection into the Thursday night meeting. It's an open workshop. Herb and I and Tom and Roger do it as a public service. There's no dues or fees for this thing. So, you could come in and learn an awful lot about this emotional sobriety. Well, we're looking at emotional sobriety and self-esteem right now. And we're using a lot of the work of Dr. Nathaniel Brandon, some of my work, some of these other therapists I've talked about, Herb's work, Tom's work. Tom's a therapist, Roger's a therapist. It's a remarkable night. It really is. There's a lot, and there's a bunch of videos that are archived that you can go back and listen to other meetings and really put yourself through a graduate level course in emotional sobriety if you listen to all of it. But one of the things that we might pivot towards at one point is Stephen Covey wrote this book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Brilliant book, sold millions of copies. And one of his concepts in terms of being able to be, and this was from the focus on, as a person, but in the context of being an employee and an employer, he talked about increasing our sphere of influence. How? And that's what Chuck C. did, Herb.
Yeah.
Chuck C. went around and he increased his sphere of influence. What can I do to make your life better? What can I do to, and that's serving me because I want to be of value to you. Right. And see, so that fills my bank account.
Yeah.
When I can be of value to someone I care about, that's a big deposit in my bank account.
Yeah.
So this is great stuff. Thank you, Brandy. Wonderful description. Did you get what you needed?
Yes, thank you.
Good.
Karen, we need you to start your video stream. You are up next.
Okay, I didn't, I just saw 3 people in front of me. Okay.
No, Karen Patrice.
Yeah. I'm here. I just thought I saw 3 people in front of me.
No, this is not the right person.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
It's the right person.
Rainey, it is the right person.
Okay, there. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Karen.
Wow. Okay. Number 1, what happened?
Yeah.
He did not introduce me at his birthday party. And hold on.
So you walked into the birthday, or how did that go down? You described what went down.
He had a sobriety birthday party, and when he got ready to do his speech, he didn't introduce me. That's what happened.
Yep.
My reaction
Now,
was
this is your husband or your boyfriend?
no boyfriend.
Okay.
No, not my husband. So I was kind of like on the side with my friend because, you know, he didn't even ask me to. Well, I was on the side. So reaction. So my body, I just stood up straight, like real composed, as if, you know, I was cool with it and I was okay. I was quiet. And then I started whispering like to my friend, like, he did it. I can't believe it. He's ignoring me. I'm done. You know, this is what I said.
Yep.
And so what it did to me, I'm kind of going by the list, right?
I love you're doing a great job. You follow the rules very well, Karen. Obviously,
What
he
it
didn't.
meant to me. I tried.
You're a rule follower. I can tell that. See, and he didn't follow the rules. I mean,
He
he's
didn't
in
know.
trouble. Oh my God, he's in trouble. I got it. I see.
Oh my God. I was not important. One more time. I was not acknowledged. I wasn't cherished. I wasn't worthy. I'm not the one. And I'm really, really embarrassed.
Wow. Embarrassed.
So
Tell me about the embarrassed part. You're embarrassed because
because because he didn't introduce me and he
well,
didn't
because
make me
obviously everybody can see I'm not important.
exactly.
That's the embarrassment, right?
Yes,
Everybody just saw that I am not important to this man at all.
exactly.
Yeah, got it.
So when it said reflect itself, I don't know.
Well,
said
it said I'm not important. You got it. You said it.
yeah, I was just another person at the party.
That's it. That's right. That's what it meant to you.
And then I didn't, to your expectation, I said he was supposed to hold my hand and introduce me to everyone, especially when he gave his birthday speech.
Yes.
And then number 4. Okay, this is how I got this one out of what you said at the bottom. Anyway, 4. He should have said in his speech that I met this very special lady in my life and she's made me a better person and that I love you, baby. He should have told me, yeah.
I hear that. I can hear it.
So 5, go to 5. I mean,
Yeah,
the last
let's see.
one.
I want to see what you did with 5. You look at. I love how clean you're doing this. It's really good. You're getting right to the meat of it. Go ahead. Let's hear 5.
Like this one, but this is what I said because really, I'm supposed to stay my authentic, beautiful self.
Yes.
And it's none of my business what my boyfriend does.
Okay, that's moving in the right direction, but we can go farther with it. We're going to go farther with it. Okay.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
Strap yourself in, girl.
Okay.
You were wanting him to give you what you weren't giving him. I knew it. See, strap yourself in. You see the look on her eyes, sir?
Mhm.
Should I say it again? You were wanting him to give you what you weren't giving him. You were wanting him to make his birthday about you. You wanted him to make it about you. You made it about you. You made his birthday about you. It wasn't about his birthday. It was about whether he's going to get up and make a public declaration about his undying love for this beautiful woman that's standing in the wing over here.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for his?
I think it was mislabeled. You should have said, we're going to an engagement announcement, honey. This is not your birthday. So you've got to understand what you're supposed to do today. You are supposed to get up and announce your undying love for me.
At least mention me.
No, but that's look, see, it's back to your value as a girlfriend depends on what he's doing. Your value as a girlfriend could depend on seeing how important this was for him, and that thankfully he was focusing on what he needed to do and didn't get lost in you. I consider that's a great girlfriend that gives you that space, instead of puts all kinds of demands on how you're supposed to behave, and then you feel like you failed her when you just had your birthday. You're shaking your head. What is that?
It's hard to, I see what you're saying because you're giving me another point of view.
Yes, right on. That's exactly.
Oh, well, what is the point of view that you think that Alan is giving you?
That it's all about me, and I had expectations and they weren't met.
But what's the truth about this birthday gathering? What's the actual truth about it?
It's kind of sad. I don't want to say that it was about him and his celebration.
It was only about him and his celebration. That is correct. It had nothing to do with you. Not one thing did it have to do with you.
Except that he wanted you there. I
Yeah,
mean, that had to
well,
do with you.
yes.
You were invited to come. You
Yeah.
were there. He wanted you to witness him.
You
Yeah.
can't make a person, you know what I mean? I feel kind of sad. I might not act like it.
But you're sad about what, though?
But say, yeah, what is the sadness? This is a key. What is the sadness about?
Because I'm still putting expectations that he should have, because if he loved me or really wanted me, or just like, look at those other couples, they do it. The other couples, yeah.
Well, see yeah, but you see, you are putting an expectation on it, and you have a rule that if you love me, this is how you're supposed to behave. And that's what I'm saying. You're not giving him what you're asking him to give you.
Right.
You want
keep
him.
saying that. Wow.
I know. I am going to keep saying that.
I think you need to unpack it a little bit, Alan, because I don't think she broke the code on it.
So you want him to recognize you and what this meant for you to be there with him. But because you made it about you, you weren't able to recognize that this was his birthday. And it was about him being able to celebrate what his recovery meant to him. And that for whatever reason, that the relationship didn't come into it, except that it did, that he wanted you there to be a part of it. See, in a healthy relationship, when I don't have my rules, keeping me from seeing who you are and what's really going on, this is what Herb said. What is the reality of that? The reality was it was his celebration. It wasn't an engagement party where he's going to introduce you to his friends and, that kind of, it was his birthday. What number birthday was it?
30.
Wow. That's a big friggin' deal. 3 decades.
Yeah.
Boy, that's something to beat a big drum on.
Yeah. And I
Right?
had only been knowing him like a year and a half. So.
Well,
Yeah.
and we can factor that in. I want him to treat me like I've been in his life for 30 years. See, we do got to prune some of these expectations that you have and cut them back a little bit, because you're setting yourself up for a lot of Herb. I think Herb rightly say, we're going to have pain in life, but we don't need to have suffering. And you're creating some suffering for yourself here. That's unnecessary. So if you were able to step back and instead of making it about you and you made it about him, you would sit in there and say to him when he came off, honey, it was wonderful to see you share your 30 years. I was so glad to be a part of this. It means so much to me. I'm so glad I'm with you.
Wow.
And that I'm your girl.
And that's the big, and it sounds so good, and I feel better.
But see, we can't say that when we make it about us. See, then what we're doing is we're expecting him to do that instead of you be responsible for the connection. You create your space. What did you say? You wanted him to recognize you as his beautiful, you said it so wonderfully, as his beautiful, lovely girlfriend. How did you put it?
Said, he should have said in his speech that I met this very special, caring lady in my life, and she has made me a better person, and that I love you, baby.
And that had you talked to him the way I just did, he would have felt every one of those things. But you know who's most important to know what you just said?
What?
What you just said. Who's it most important to know what you just said?
Me.
You got it. You got to have that. If you have that, then you don't need him to prove anything. If you know that to be true.
Well, maybe I don't know it to be true.
Well, yeah, because you make too many things about you. And you can't make it true when you're making it about you.
Wow.
No, that's great.
Embarrassed too, because my friend, the one I was going like this to,
Yeah,
whispering,
right, yeah.
I think behind my back, I know behind my back, she kind of whispered in his ear, you didn't even recognize Karen.
Oh.
So you see that how my life has been.
Yeah, we got to clean that up. You're right.
I put people in my business,
That's
you know,
right.
and I
Well,
see.
you do that because you're not taking care of your business. See, that's I mean, all right. Well, this was good. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm up.
Hi, Colleen.
Carlene. And I had an interaction the other day with my son. And just a background, so you have to understand this, is my son works for a company that is very new in its field and is now the biggest one that does environmental restoration. But uses a kind of private equity model. But my husband founded this firm. It was his feeling of legacy, not only for the world but it was his feeling of what he wanted to do. He came to this very late in life when he was 50, but it also was his legacy to his son, who said he started him on the way because my son was interested in environmental stuff even before. And the only other part is that during my son's life and our marriage, my husband was his playmate, his co-worker at times, and his fishing buddy and everything else. And he always called me his emotional person. So he would often come to me with things that, so anyway, he called me and he talked to me about his anger and upset about not having the management talk to the junior staff, which he's kind of the next level down, about what they can expect financially and what they can expect for a career path. He said they could get a lot more in salary elsewhere and they're going to start losing people. He said that he's written but not sent a letter to the head of operations to express what he says he's already expressed to his boss and to this COO. And he says others at his level have already expressed. And the fact is, I know I own part of the management company, a small part of the management company. And, but I'm not involved in the business, but I know that they're not as clear, things are not as clear cut as they are. This is a new venture and things are not as predictable to the degree that they could give a lot of assurances. And it's also growing. And so it has to spend stuff to do that. And so, I kind of know that. And also in the last 2 weeks, in the last week or so, I've had two people that are also, over 40, say that they are so tired of working with or supervising millennials because they're so entitled. So that's the that's what happened. He talked to me about this. He's frustrated and whatever. And my reaction was, how I responded to him was, I tried to just say, I understand that you want clarity, and you know, they're growing and they're doing stuff. And I mean, this is hard for everybody. I think nobody's getting, hopefully, the money that they will get someday, but everything isn't as clear cut as he would like. And I reminded him he's doing important work. And I said, it's a matter of trust. And I said, but if you need to find other work, you don't have to work at this firm. You don't have to do this just because your dad founded the firm. In private, I reacted with fear and with shame. I'm fearful that the partners will think about him kind of like what I'm thinking about him, that he is acting entitled and not appreciative of the opportunity he has been given. I also was afraid of how the partners will deal with him and deal with me, and that he's hurting himself if he does this. And I also reacted internally in the fact that you've described a lot when you describe on marriages, and his wife, who I love, but she also, their marriage could use what you've described in counseling, because she puts a lot of pressure on him and financial pressure on him. And he's making a really good salary, so this is not like, that what did it say about me and what is reflected self, that I've raised an entitled millennial? That it also says that I don't know how to deal with this, but my husband would have, that I'm kind of the deficient parent. My husband died 6 years ago, so that you need to know. Yeah. I'm a deficient parent, and Trig got used, my son got used to my husband telling him things. And when my husband died, I can't tell him things because I don't know. And the others are not going to tell him that. My husband kind of enabled this entitlement of knowing what was going on. And I also, realized that reflected sense of self, I've been trying to do this emotional sobriety work. And I realized this isn't my business. This is between Trig and the management of EIP. And if Fred didn't found the firm and felt it was his legacy, both to the world and Trig, I probably wouldn't care so much or take it personally. And I'm taking it personally. I'm kind of being defensive for Fred in some ways. And my expectation of Trig is that I'd like Trig to be patient, be prudent in his spending and not pressure the management. And my expectation, what I think I should do is say, you're smart, I believe in you, I know you'll figure this out, period. But it still upsets me.
Yeah. Well, of course it does, Carlene. With the meaning you're giving to what he's saying, it would upset you. But see, it's very important to keep in mind, based on this discussion of humility, that my interpretation and feelings are not an infallible guide to reality. And so when you label him as entitled, see, I think you're putting yourself in a real difficult position, because you can't support him then, because you're embarrassed. Mm-hmm. You know, I shouldn't have raised a kid like this. I mean, somehow that comes back to reflecting on you. I don't hear him be entitled at all. Entitlement is when you're not doing anything, you expect to be paid a lot of money. That's, to me, entitlement. hey, I want, $1 million a year and I just want to show up whenever I want to show up for work. That's entitlement. It sounds like, you didn't describe it, but I imagine he probably gets in there and he's pretty, pretty capable and competent in what he's doing. And he's just talking about, wanting to have his worth recognized and thinking about his future. Fantastic. But see, you go in and it's like because you're dismissing it and labeling it as wrong, you can't support him and just have empathy for him. You get that's the tension in your personality, right? It's like part of you feels you got to correct him, get him on the right path. He's on the right path for himself. He's trying to stand up for himself, trying to figure things out. It's great.
I guess part of my sense is comparing this business to venture capital business.
Well, all right, he might be doing that. So he'll learn that. He'll figure that out. He can figure that out. That'll be something that'll come. He probably is if he came out of that other world. But see, you don't need to interfere with his learning and his growth and control it that it goes the way you want it to. See, it's more about
that's the part that I know from what
I know you do. I hear it. I listen, I hear the tension. See, the tension is there's one part of you that knows, look, this has nothing to do with me. This is his journey. But then the other part of you takes it so personally. And see,
the other part of me knows that one, I have probably helped him feel not entitled. That's the wrong word, but
it's the wrong word. I don't hear entitlement here.
No, it's the wrong word. It's
he wants to feel good about himself. He's trying. Well, maybe he's putting too much on money to feel good about himself. Maybe that's where this got off base, but it's not entitlement. It's attaching to the wrong value. That could be part of it, right? The moral character stuff that we talk about and trying to become our best possible self is to balance that out. And you were kind of saying that between, well, look at what you're doing and the contribution you're making, and there's value to that, not just to the money. I hear that issue is going on, but once again, you won't get there with him if he feels dismissed in what he's wanting. And that's where I see you bordering, is on dismissing him to deal with it. And that won't work.
And there's something niggling at me, and I'm not quite sure I can put it into words.
Yeah.
But is the criteria or litmus test of the correct or successful behavior your husband for both you and your son? Are you looking at some sort of value proposition in relationship there? I'm not sure I heard it, but it seemed like there was a dynamic there that might be unhealthy.
probably in the fact that, well, there are a couple of things going on. And when you say money is I think that's right on target. I mean, the kid makes $200,000 a year. It's not like he's, in a nonprofit making zip to nada. And he's 36. But it's also that when my husband started this firm, he didn't have a salary we financed this company for 10 years. Or not 10 years.
But all of that's interesting, but that's...
Well, it's that he gave up, but it's that my husband gave up, had this attitude, everything's worth doing this for. But Trig doesn't have that attitude. So maybe I am using Fred as a guy.
There.
Yeah. No, you are. Then you're judging him
Yeah.
on that criteria, but he's living his life. He's not, right? See, that's the differentiation part.
Grew up privileged. So it's like,
Which is okay, because he's still there. He wants to do that, but he also wants to.
He wants to make it a business so that he has a wealth building situation. Yeah.
well, knows he's gonna have, money, but.
Yeah, but he might want to do it himself, though. It's not just what he's going to inherit.
Yeah.
Then that's the entitlement thing. If a person rests their sense of security on their entitlement, then they lose a chance of self-esteem.
Well, that's a good way of thinking.
Right. See, so what he's doing is he's trying to build his self-esteem here. he's really, really trying to stand for himself. I think there's a lot to feel good about it.
Yeah, that helps. That helps.
Right, right. Well,
Okay,
there's a very big dynamic of independence on his part, which sounds very healthy, actually.
It's very helpful. I remember your daughter one time when you were having a discussion and you were going to tell her how she was supposed to approach her singing career, and she wouldn't have anything to do with it. Dad, don't tell me to practice. You don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I'll never forget that discussion you had with your daughter.
No, it wasn't me.
No,
I
I'm
don't
talking to her. I'm talking to her.
Yeah.
I'm talking to her, not you, Carlene.
Okay.
And she had that and we see it in spades in her. Look at what she's done.
Yeah,
She's her own person, man.
right.
Yeah,
Okay, Carlene.
thank you.
Thank you.
So it is now 4:30. I have a hard stop at 4:30 Eastern Standard Time. I know it's 1:30 for you guys, and we stop at 2 today. So we'll do a few more, but Herb and I want to take at least 10 minutes at the end to wrap things. So we'll work for about 20 more minutes, and then we will go to wrapping. So we'll see how far we can go. We might try to expedite the next few people so we can get more people in. So why don't we invite... And I want to see you. So get your...
The next person up is
Segan or Egan?
Segan, I guess it is.
Segan, can you get your camera working?
And can you unmute?
Did you fall asleep? All right, let's move on, and then she can straighten that out. I don't want to waste time there, Rainey. So let's have Pam come in. And
Hi,
let's-
thank you. Thank you so much. So I'll describe what happened. My husband, I have a stepson, and he lives in Brooklyn. He's in his 40s in residency in medical school. And he was just visiting us for 4 days. And there's a whole history with him. He's a really good person. It's all about him. And he used to crash. We've been together 17 years. He would just come and stay over, and there were no boundaries. And we had to teach him that you just can't come over and stay forever. So what happened was he was here for 4 days, and then he told us that he was coming back in January. I'd be for about 8 days or 9 days. And my reaction was, I didn't react externally, but internally, I panicked. I thought, oh my God, he's going to be here. I have no space. And we have a decent sized house. I'm claustrophobic. I don't want him in our house. Maybe I can go away during that time. My expectation was that he would say, oh, I'll stay for 4 days, which he normally does. My unhealthy dependence is that he should stay according to my timetable.
You should stay as long as I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah, as I'm comfortable with. And to achieve emotional freedom, add more self and stay connected during the trouble. Okay, to hold myself accountable, I need to, and I did this, but I don't understand why I'm so tortured. I said to myself, I'm 67, my husband's 81. He's in great shape. But his son is coming to stay, and isn't that wonderful for my husband? I mean, that's so great. And so I know I won't say, well, he should only stay 4 days. I won't do that. That's just a horrible way to be.
You won't impose that demand on him.
Yeah, I won't do that. I mean, it's principles above.
Listen, I think that's an appropriate, response to the situation is to withhold that.
Right, exactly. So I seem really healthy.
That's good judgment, I guess is what I'm saying. That's good judgment on your part. Right on.
Yeah, I have to say that, I feel I'm fully baked. I'm healthy on the outside.
Yeah.
what the hell goes on inside?
Well, because see, you got this idea that, see, what I hear going on for you is the anxiety is you're going to lose yourself.
Yes, yes, yes.
See, that's what I'm picking up with you, Pam, is that somehow his presence is going to knock you off balance to the point where you're going to be lost and wandering around the house and, you know, disoriented and can't find yourself.
Exactly. I know that comes from my childhood, 5 kids growing up, and I was
Oh,
over
there it is. Yeah.
husband number 2, but who's counting? Would always have his best friend over, and I'd hide.
I stopped counting after 8 wives, so I stopped.
But the friend would come over, and it was bad marriage. We were really young. Oh, as husband number 1, and he came over, and
But you got lost. You got lost. See what you're telling me, you got lost in your childhood, you got lost. So that's the anxiety that comes up. So this has to do with your relationship to that lost part of yourself from as a younger self.
right.
And
What do I do?
Well, I would go into dialogue myself with that part of me and try to take care of her. You know, is that before she was dependent on other people taking care of her, and your job is to soothe her, is to say, honey, I know you're afraid, you're anxious about getting lost here. My job is to make sure you don't. I'm going to show up for you. I'm going to protect you. I'm your protector.
Yeah.
So you got to give that to yourself so that you're not dependent on the situation to be okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, good.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks.
Carrie.
Hi, everybody. This has been so amazing. I want to also
Oh, we lost you, Carrie. You muted yourself. You touched
okay.
something. There you go.
Sorry. I just wanted to say that I'm going to tell you the situation, but it's also just classic for me, like with any customer service person, or if they screw up like my doctor's appointment or anything like that. So it seems minor, but it's my Achilles. So in this example, I have 3 older siblings. I am taking my mother on a vacation. We decided, the siblings, that for her, it's for around her 75th birthday. So we're going to pay for her plane ticket. So my mom and I sat on the phone for over an hour looking at flights. She is going to be 75. She just had major back surgery. She's afraid to have like too close of a layover because she could miss the flight. But if it's too long, it's bad for her back. My mother is extremely independent, owns her own home, does yoga 5 days a week, but she's nervous about a few things. So we go through this whole thing. And then I'm realizing that if we do this exactly the way my mother wants it, it could be an expensive plane ticket, like $800 to $1,000. And I just didn't know if people had that expectation. So I sent a text out to my siblings and said, FYI, mom's plane ticket could be pretty expensive. It's $800 to $1,000. So my first 2 siblings replied, fine. And my other sibling, which, by the way, at this point in our lives, we do all have the money to each pitch in like $250 for this. And she was like, I'm in, to one texted me separately and was like, hey girl, why would this ticket be so expensive? I just looked and I can find flights for $400. So I immediately got irritated internally. And I was like, I know there are flights, but we have to remember she's 75 years old. And we were looking for specific connections. She doesn't know how to use Uber, so we're trying to land around the same time so she doesn't have to get nervous doing that. And she didn't respond because she was on a work trip. So then the next morning, she responded, $800 is insane. And I can't remember exactly what she said, but I replied, fine, and then you should feel free to deal with it. And then she replied, okay, no problem. And I immediately panicked because now I'm not going to have control over us getting to the airport on the same time and all of these things. But so then I called her and I just said, hey, text probably isn't the right way. And she said, oh, our other sister's on the other line. Let us merge us. So we merged them. And for me to try to not get upset and be stern or caustic in a sense, then I start crying. So I start crying and I said, oh, I didn't start crying yet, but I said, listen, mom's 75 years old. And in my head, I'm thinking, she has dedicated her life to taking care of us and your children. I don't have children. And my mom has bent it over backwards to do stuff for them. And I said, and I explained everything to you guys, or to her, about arrival, departure, blah, blah, blah. And I just said, so I really just don't think this is that big of a deal. And so she replied, well, that cost is absolutely absurd. And I don't care about the money. I care about wasting money. And it's insane that we would do that. So then I started crying and I said, okay, well, I also just was giving you the heads up and I'm going to go now because I don't want to get upset. I was already crying. And I said, but I will let you guys know like further details. And so that's what happened. My reaction is automatic irritation when I'm not getting what I want. And when people are questioning me, or if I like show up at an appointment and they gave it to someone else, because I think it's so rude. And so to identify the underlying expectation is that I think people should follow the rules. I always follow the rules, so should they. And if she just didn't challenge me, this would have all been fine. And then my unhealthy dependence is that I was hearing them say like, oh, poor little Carrie, she's being dumb again. She's stupid because I'm the youngest. And so my worthiness and my sense of strength and smartness is
self-esteem.
Yes, is based on other people's thoughts of me.
Right.
And so it's I'm okay if nobody challenges me and everybody supports me all the time. So my turnaround was to hold on to myself. I need to try to pause and breathe because it is a very flash reaction, and possibly address it later when I can be calm and not cry or be curt, and just tell myself that I'm okay. And so then to flip it, I said that I am okay even if PJ, Heather, Bridget, or my boyfriend Daryl think I'm stupid, lazy, and useless.
Okay. All right. So will you talk to my kids about my plane ticket going back to California? No, I'm teasing
Absolutely.
you. No, I'm teasing you. So look, see, I think the issue becomes one of how to deal with the differences. And see the way you guys deal with the differences. See, what your sister did to you is the same thing you're doing to your sister.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're seeing here is a family tradition.
Okay.
We won't respect differences. We'll make other people feel bad about their choices and try to get them to do things our way by shaming them into the right behavior.
Yes.
It's not, there's a lot of other ways to have fun. That's not a good one.
And I feel like if I don't play, then I will never get heard.
Well, I think that's a big lie. See, there's
Okay.
the way to get heard, and nobody's doing this, is first of all, if we go back to the St. Francis prayer, if I want to be understood, what do I need to do?
Understand. I'm so afraid of I was a doormat for so long.
I know, but being understanding that's the second part. If I want to be understood by you, I've got to understand myself first.
Hmm.
See, I'm flipping the St. Francis prayer around a little bit.
Right.
See, I'm not asking you to understand her.
Right, or them.
See, that's where you flipped it right there. You said, I'm going to lose myself again. Are you crazy, Dr. Berger? I've done that my whole life. I'm not saying that.
Right.
See, that's how you taking it. I said, I want you to understand what makes this important to you, and to understand that just because of those things that are making it important to you doesn't mean your sister has to have the same values that you do about it. And
even understand or agree. That is
yeah.
good.
So, but if you get it, if you say, look, I honor my mom. She's done a lot for us. I'm willing to make sacrifices for her. That's part of how I want to honor her. That's you. But you can't put that on other people and expect that they've got to think about it the same way you do.
Right.
And I appreciate you. That's why I said I want you to get my ticket.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I want you to get my ticket. Oh my God.
Dude, I mean,
all of these
you got,
various
hey, you
things.
want two parents that'll
Oh my
appreciate you. They're
God,
over here.
wonderful.
Herb and I, Carrie, I'll send you my itinerary. I'm going to Ireland, by the way.
Oh,
Can you
my
get me?
husband's there. I can hook you up.
Very thoughtful, yeah.
I know, you're
And
wonderful.
then keep
But
in,
nobody else has to be.
and keep in mind what the goal is. The goal is for your mother to have a nice trip. That's the goal of the siblings, at least stated. And your sister lied to you. She said, oh, it's not about the money, but we don't need to pay that kind of money. No, it was about the money with her.
Yeah.
For her it is. For your
And-
sister it is, but it's not about the money for you. And that's okay. It doesn't have to be.
And when you hold on to yourself, you do not have to explain yourself and you do not have to defend yourself.
No.
This is what we're doing and you can play. So you don't like the money. So how much are you willing to provide?
That's it.
We'll
go.
take care of,
That's-
we'll take
that's
care
how
of the
you hold on to
balance.
yourself.
I did say that. I did
Yeah.
say that. And I was like, well, just send me however much you want. And she
There
said,
you
it's the point. This is absurd. Which they all make
Well,
more money than me anyway.
But see, when she says that's not the point, it's absurd, say, I can see that it's absurd for you. For me, it's not. See, that's adding more self.
There you go.
It's absurd for you and it's not for me. That's
She
the
just
same-
got it.
That's the staying connected and adding more self. So
Yeah.
of course you don't want to do it because it's absurd for you. For me, it's not. And this is what I want to do. So you contribute whatever you want. And I'm fine with that because this is important to me.
And I will never call you a cheapskate.
That would be a little big, right? We can leave that part out. It's like
I did want to shame
consult
her.
Pam for that one. Pam would say, do not say that.
I did
Pam
want to
would say
shame
that.
her and say, after everything she's
I
done.
know, but see that you guys do that. That's how you guys try to negotiate.
Yeah.
It's by slitting the other person's throat. It's not a great negotiation skill.
Thank you. I got it. I appreciate your.
You do. That's wonderful. Thank you.
In May, I'm going in May to Ireland.
I'll email you.
All right, we got time for one more.
Charlotte.
Hi. So glad I could get in because this is kicking my ass. It's about my husband, but it's how I relate to all men. And I just feel like I'm in quicksand because I don't know how to be different. My husband doesn't know what he wants to eat. This sounds going to sound silly, and I have to cook for him, or I feel like I have to cook for him. And decide what he has to eat. Well, I hate cooking, and it reminds me of my mother having to cook for my father, and it reminds me of all the things that I've done to please men, including selling myself. So it just it's very deep, this having to do something that I don't want to do. So how I handle it.
But
is-
Charlotte, let me jump in here though and help you put a little different narrative on it.
Okay.
You don't want to do something that your mother did. See see what's happening is the past is interfering with the present.
Right.
And so you're projecting what you saw your mother doing
Right.
as the motive that would drive you to do it. And see, this is very important to separate the present from the past.
Okay.
So that your life is not being driven by what was, but by
Right.
who you are today.
Right.
All right, but
And
I'm planting that seed. Go on, but I want you to hear what I'm saying.
And there's also some recent memories of sexual abuse
Yeah, like a lot.
from my dad.
Yes.
So it's all of this with men.
Yes.
And what I do is I say nasty things. I'm nasty, and I end up doing it anyhow, but want to shame and guilt
Oh yeah.
and manipulate the situation. And what it means to me is I think I have to take care of another man. I have to not be true to myself to please a man.
Yep.
And it's like I was taught that,
Yep. Very, very clearly you were taught that.
and the deepness is that I'm not lovable unless I do these things.
Mhm.
I'm not, so that's what it says to me, that I have
So
to
that's
earn
your
love.
that's your buy-in on that idea though, right?
Right. That I have to earn love and that I don't get to say no. Um,
But see, this is where I think, because the past is contaminating so much of the present,
yeah.
is that it has nothing to do with that. See, it has to do with you being clear of what you want to do and who you want to be, not what you were, not pleasing someone else, but what does it mean to you to meet your partner's needs? Is that something you want to do?
I don't want to cook.
Okay. All right,
I
that's
don't want
clear.
to do it,
Okay.
but I think there's this fear
Well, then-
that he won't love me.
Well, you're getting too far down the road. I mean, the
Yeah.
first thing is to say, God, honey, I want to make you happy. I love you and care about you, but there's a part of me that doesn't want to cook. Can we talk about that?
Right.
I want to find a way to make you happy and please you, but there's something.
But I really don't. I want him to do that for me. I mean, I'm so
Well, that's
selfish.
a nut.
I've made him into this person that he needs to make up for all the men that have harmed me.
Oh my
And
God. Yeah.
yeah, it's really
he's gonna
sick
fail that
what
one.
I've done.
Yeah, well, it's going to fail that one, and you're not going to get what you want. See, I think to make up for what you haven't had, though, is not to give you everything you think you needed. It's to create an atmosphere where you can take a risk of standing for your integrity and learning how to have union with what Eric Fromm called the preservation of your individuality. See, that's the risk you've got to take. That's what this is about, not him reversing the effect, but creating an opportunity for you to hold on to yourself better.
Right. That's exactly right. To be able to set a boundary,
To say
because
what your
my
truth is.
insides are screaming.
Yeah, but to set a boundary without cutting him off.
Well, but you're setting a boundary for yourself, not for him. You're standing for yourself, but you're not standing against him.
See, emotional sobriety is where we learn to act on our behalf without impinging on the rights or feelings of somebody else.
Right.
That's what emotional sobriety is.
Yeah.
So you got to tweak it a little bit where you're heading, right? You got to shift from you're thinking that it's this when it's not that, it's over here. This was, he's got to give me what I didn't get in my past. This is an opportunity for me to have connection with individuality. And I get to experiment that with this man and try to figure that out.
Okay.
It's an emerging opportunity. It's not to correct the past in that way. It is to correct the past, but by you using the opportunity, not him. Okay?
Okay.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
And offer him
very vulnerable. Very vulnerable.
Offer him a cooking class.
Good idea, Herb. Herb's very practical. I like Herb's practical idea.
Thank you.
All right. So, Doctor, I am exhausted right now.
Well, that's 4 hours. It's pretty intense, Alan.
Yeah, especially for being the old codgers that we are, but you still have this energy. I respect your stamina so much, Herb.
Well, it's been a very robust discussion. Alan, you and I are wonderfully spontaneous, and hopefully it helps people. We kept most of the people on the call, and we're going to continue.
Yeah, and we'll have more of these discussions and more space. Sorry for those of you that we weren't able to invite in to do some work. But look, the way I've always experienced this is that whether I'm in the hot seat or not, I'm working. That every one of you, as you're listening to this, can identify with some of the issues going on, can put yourself in that thing. So We're always working whether we're in the spotlight or not. So keep that in mind as you have these experiences with us. What I just want to point out today is that the stuff that we're talking about is counterculture. And please keep that in mind. The fact that we don't see these things quickly, and what they may sound like so obvious when Herb says something or I do, is just because we've broken the trance.
Right.
And you cannot operate in the way we're talking about if you're still in the trance. Then this stuff doesn't make sense. It's like, are you kidding me? What are you talking about, guys? And you can see that it's a part of us gets confused. Now, I want to say, if you're confused, that's a very good thing.
Yes.
It means that you're moving towards something new.
Yes.
Don't try to resolve that. Don't try to make sense of your confusion. Steep yourself into it like you would a nice tea bag into some water. You don't want to just dunk it in and pull it out. The tea's too weak then. You want to let it sit in there. You want to absorb all of the wonderful spices and flavors from the tea bag. So we have been, putting you guys in a pot of tea today, water, and you are the tea bags, and you're being steeped. So that this is the process, and it's ongoing. As we said in the beginning, no one amongst us is going to jump in here and get this stuff. Herb and I have done a lot of work on it. I still fall short at times in my life with these things. Less today, a lot less than before.
Yeah.
Rarely do I trip into, fall into blaming myself or others. Every now and again I will, and I'll catch myself. But the difference is today I can catch myself much faster. Today I can get that balance back a lot quicker than I could ever get it back before in my life. So that's the good news. Once again, thank you for coming and supporting our work. Without you, this stuff is meaningless for us. Not it has meaning for us, but it's meaningful in that we get to share it with you.
Yeah, and we'll be doing so. We've scheduled 4 new workshops that'll be coming up and announced in the next month or two, quarterly over the next balance of this year and in the first quarter of next year already. That we'll have a series of 4 that will be announced by the end of maybe the early part of February.
Now, and we've been kicking around the idea, and I mentioned it to her before, that possibly in September here in Pennsylvania, we are going to do an emotional sobriety convention workshop over the course of a weekend. And it will be at my property here in Pennsylvania. There will be some campsites available if we get a permit for it, but there's plenty of wonderful bed and breakfasts. And we will be spending time outside under canopies, and there'll be people giving talks on emotional sobriety, some music for us to enjoy, some great barbecue. We're going to just have a hell of a time on it. So if you're interested in that, please send that interest to Rainey, and she will get Herb and I the list, and we'll let you guys know more about it as the event unfolds.
Do you have a target weekend at this
It
point?
looks like it's going to be mid-September.
Yeah.
Is what we're looking for.
A beautiful time in the East Coast.
Perfect timing. It'll be not too hot, a little cool, and we can have a wonderful time together. So I'll let you guys know more as time goes by.
Anything else, Alan?
That's all I have. Thank you, Herb. I always love doing this with you. And
I have a adaptation of the 7-step prayer that I've been tinkering with. It's not final, but you and I had talked about step 6 and 7 as the referred to rite of passage into adulthood, which I believe the 7-step prayer is a wonderful prayer for emotional sobriety, and I'd like to have us conclude with that prayer. That'd be all right? All right. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, healthy and unhealthy. I pray that you now remove from me every inclination and behavior that gets in the way of my usefulness to you and my helpfulness to others. Grant me wisdom, strength, and courage as I go out from here to try to do your will by living in alignment with reality as it really is. Amen. Thank you, everybody, for being here today, and stay tuned.
Thank you, Herb. Thank you, Alan. Good to see you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Herb. Thank you,
Thank
Alan.
you,
Oh my
everyone.
God.
Thank
Alan,
you.
did you get the study that you asked for that I sent you?
Thank you, Alan.
Arlene.
Thanks, Herb. It was great. Enjoyed it so much. I'm
Okay.
glad you guys found it of value.
And Alan, did you get the study that I sent you that you asked for about the fight and flight? It's
Oh,
called.
yes. Thank you so much for that. That was very interesting. That
Okay.
was very helpful.
Okay.
Thank you,
I'm still
everybody. That was
digesting.
wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good to be on.
Bye-bye, guys.